And all around me are familiar faces. No expression, no expression. And all around me are familiar faces. No expression, no expression. And hello, everyone. This is Dick Lucas. This is Shooting from the Hip. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the virus. What does this fucking thing actually do to you when it's inside your body? We're going to talk about some interesting things the U.S. Army is doing, working with FEMA. We're going to talk about the CARES Act. That's this 2.1 trillion stimulus thing you've been hearing about, the largest ever in U.S. history. We're going to talk about some WhatsApp information, that misinformation traveling on that platform, misinformation about the virus. We're going to talk about some remarks from Howard Marks. He's a legendary investor. Always love his hot takes. We're going to talk about this COVID tracking project. U.S. is up to 100,000 tests a day last few days. This is good. This is a good sign. We're going to talk some digital U.S. dollar stuff, which is interesting. Always got to get some blockchain stuff in because I talk about what's interesting, and that's super interesting to me right now. So this is Shooting from the Hip number 6. We stream this live on Saturday's noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll update the show notes in the end. It's available wherever podcasts are available. Holy shit, we have a big ass wasp here that was just bugging me when I was setting up, and damn, it might be an issue, but we'll try to stay woke on it. Best thing you can do for the show, like the video, subscribe, tell your friends, tweet it out, Facebook, share it out. Really appreciate anyone you think is interested in this or would be interested in. Would really appreciate it. Oh, we got Jack Lucas and we got Nice Things on deck. Okay, thanks for joining, boys. Okay, I got to focus though, but I love that you boys are on. Yeah, also, shout out to Will Conway, Liam Madden, Nancy Finley, some recent monthly Patreon cost about $500 to maintain. Me and Charlie split the proceeds on this. We're trying to make it work here. And if you're at least contributing $5 a month, you're going to get full access to the show notes. So everything in my hand, you're going to get full access to this Google Doc. So check it out. You can follow already live right now. So go there, and thank you to everyone who gives me feedback on this. Matt Buckley and Jack Lucas who are in the live chat right now. Really appreciate you all, my homies. And we got Charlie Finley, producer of the show, who's live with us in the chat room. So I'm not going to be looking at the chat too much. Again, if you're listening, holy shit, we got this wasp here. This is going to be an issue. I'm not going to be looking at the chat too much. I'm trying to get in a riff zone here, but Charlie will bubble up questions to me. And I might check the chat a little bit depending on how we're doing. We got a big show today, so I'm going to try to hop right into it here. Okay. First things first, everyone. What the fuck does the virus do? So there's been a lot of talk about a lot of other stuff. The impact on countries, the impact on the healthcare system. What does it actually do when it gets inside your body? So, Quartz Act. That's that YouTube channel that releases those like 10-minute animated videos that are super informational and really interesting. Anyway, I'll link to all this stuff, but they had a really good video on this. I recommend you watching it, but I'm going to do a quick rundown on it because this virus this is really interesting. And I don't know, again, I don't know anything about viruses. I'm just going to tell you what was in this video and what the professionals are saying about what this thing does. Okay, so I want to preface this with, everything you're reading right now is incomplete information. So the band of possibilities is super wide. So that's one of the issues we're dealing with in general. Right? We don't have all the facts, and when you don't have all the facts, I'm of the mind it's better to be more cautious than not. So a lot of this stuff, even some stuff that I'm about to tell you, isn't 100% certain, but we're at the point now where it's safe to say that this is dangerous, and we're already, global economies are responding, global countries are responding to this and taking it seriously now. So I think we're beyond that point. Everyone's pretty much sold on it, but it doesn't mean we don't know the case fatality rate, for example. We won't know that for probably a couple years when all the dust settles. We don't know what it is. That's just an example. So there's some incomplete information we're operating under, but we got to do our best here. Okay, so let's start with the basics again. Okay, so SARS-CoV-2, that's the name of the virus. Again, I'm going to keep repeating this because it's important. SARS-CoV-2 is the name of the virus. That's the little thing that gets into people and causes damage. COVID-19 is the disease that it gives you. Similar to, again, HIV is the virus. AIDS is a disease that can come from that. So it's SARS-CoV-2 is short for severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus 2, which causes, again, COVID-19. So A virus is, and we talked about this last time, but a virus is just a hole around genetic material and a few proteins. Not, and it's some wouldn't even consider it life, which I think is just fucking mind blowing. So it can only make more of itself by entering another cell. Coronavirus. I'm just going to call it coronavirus throughout this, just to keep it. You know what? Let's call it SARS-CoV-2. That's more scientific. So SARS-CoV-2 may spread on surfaces, but it's unclear how long it can survive on them. So that's one of the incomplete pieces of information we have. You hear 10 hours, 12 hours, it can survive. There was some clickbait headline that said, 17 days that I saw the other day, and it's like, no, that's just when the RNA of the virus was detectable. That doesn't mean it could still infect you. So the point is, it's likely that it can spread on surfaces. So that's where we're at right now. But the main way of spreading seems to be a droplet infection. When people cough and you rub your face, so they cough or sneeze, you get those droplets on your hands, or then you touch your eyes, your nose, mouth, boom, you will likely get infected. Okay, so what happens when it gets infected? It goes through your nose, goes through your mouth, it goes down the esophagus. It goes into your, so this is where the virus goes. It goes into your intestine, spleen, or lungs, where it has the biggest effect. So these lungs, and again, I learned all this shit for the first time like a couple of days ago. So that's why I'm really sticking to the script here. This is gonna be as riffy, this little section, but then we're gonna talk about some other shit after this where I shoot from the hip more. But I want to be very careful about shoot from the hip when I'm talking about, stuff I know nothing about until like 2 days ago. I didn't even know how to pronounce epidemiology. I think on the first one I said epitomology. So that's where I'm at right now. I know what I don't know. So that's why I'm going to stick to the script a little bit on this shit. Okay, so the lungs, it gets down into your body. So the lungs is where it has the biggest effect. So the lungs are bordered with billions of epithelial cells, and which also line other organs. So the virus connects to a specific receptor on victims' membranes to inject its genetic material. So it connects to those lining cells, injects its genetic material, then tells the cell, gives it simple instructions. It says, copy me. And it's going to copy a whole bunch of them. And once it copies a whole bunch, it's going to tell the cell to self-destruct. It explodes. Explodes is a strong word, but the cell membrane breaks down. I believe that's the right terminology. And then the virus spreads from there. And then it goes and infects those other epithelial cells. So the virus growth is exponential, as you can imagine. 1 leads to 2, leads to 3, or 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, and so on. So at this point, the damage hasn't started yet. Again, we got this wasp. It's right in front of me. Jesus, we're going to be okay here, but we do live shows because, damn, I am sweating, by the way. It's also 80 degrees. We're going to have to move the umbrella, fight the sun off. We got a lot of, holy shit, we got a lot of insects around here. Okay, so here's the deal. So at this point, when the virus starts to spread, it hasn't done any damage to your body. Here's when the shit hits the fan. It's when your immune system starts to kick in, ironically. The immune system can be dangerous to yourself. You hear a lot about autoimmune disorders. The immune system tries its best, but sometimes it doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. So as the immune cells pour into the lungs to fight the virus, coronavirus infects them. So these guys, I'm here to help, boom, infected. So the cells have neither, and this is a direct quote, have neither ears nor eyes, and communicate mainly through informational proteins called cytokines. Nearly every important immune reaction is controlled by them. So the virus puts the immune system in a frenzy, calling on way more immune cells to come in than necessary, causing damage. So these immune cells, they come in, they get infected, then more immune cells come in, and it's a vicious cycle, and those get infected. Now, not all of them get infected, but that's what happens here. So it causes 2 types of havoc. First, the neutrophils. That's an immune immunity cell. What's the term here? Not immunity cell. That's dumb. We got it's an immune cell. Excuse me. It's an immune cell. So there's a neutrophil that goes in. Neutrophils are great at killing stuff. They start out by pumping enzymes that destroy as many friends as enemies. So these guys just go in and nuke everything. Then there are killer T cells, which order infected cells. So the cells where the virus has gone into and started replicating itself. Remember, before it explodes and spreads, the killer T cells go in there, tell the cell to commit suicide. So this causes a lot of the healthy lung tissue to be damaged, right? Because the immune system is also attacking healthy cells and killing those healthy cells. So this is where it starts getting dangerous. So this can cause permanent, irreversible damage called fibrosis, which causes scar tissue and leads to lifelong disabilities. So it's possible, even if you don't die from this, you can have lifelong disabilities if this really messes up your lung system. So let me just say, most people, and this video says this, again, I'm not going to say anything on this. I'm going to quote the experts here, but most people will get through it with mild symptoms, dry cough and fever. but many cases still become severe. We don't know the exact percentage for the simple reason that not all cases have been identified. Again, it's just basic math, right? So we know of the ones we've identified, we have an idea what the case fatality rate, right? The percent of those people that have died, but we don't know. We need to know everyone that's infected. There's plenty of infected people that are not showing they're not showing symptoms, or there's people that are showing mild symptoms and just haven't gotten tested. So that would increase the denominator, which would decrease the case fatality rate, right? Because there's more people that have it, a less percentage of them that are dying. So again, incomplete information, but it is safe to say at this point, this is more deadly than the flu. That case is closed. So in more severe cases, millions, it gets more interesting here. So in more severe cases, millions of epithelial cells have died, and with the protective lining gone, so remember that those are the cells that line your lungs. The tiny air sac, so that means the alveoli, those are the tiny air sacs that allow breathing to occur, can get infected with bacteria. So that protective lining's gone, the alveoli are exposed, and this can cause patients to get pneumonia, which I believe is a bacterial thing. So those protective cells are gone, boom, you can get other issues. That's like similar with HIV and AIDS, right? HIV is the virus, AIDS that's the disease, and it makes your immune system super weak. I think it pretty much shuts it down, and then that opens you up to a whole host of other issues. So the protective line, okay, so patients can get pneumonia at this point. So respiration becomes harder, even fails, and that's when patients need ventilators. So that's at the point when those systems start to come online. So at this point, your immune system's been fighting for weeks, right? So it's been fighting off the virus. Now that those cell walls are, the epithelial cells are gone, and now it's going to give you a bacterial infection. So the immune system's already pretty, it's operating at a low level right now. And then what this does is allows the bacteria to spread outside of your lungs, spread throughout your entire body, and this is when death is very likely to occur. So that's when shit really hits the fan. Now the actual death rate is hard to pin down. Definitely worse than the flu. That's where we're at. So there's two. It goes on to say there's a fast pandemic versus slow pandemic. This is what you've seen with the flattening the curve stuff, right? So a fast pandemic means a bunch of people get it quickly and then it dies off quicker. But the issue there is if a bunch of people get it, overruns the healthcare system. When it overruns the healthcare system, not even only just people with COVID-19 can't get help, but other people can't get help. People that need to have babies, people that get in car accidents, people that just have general that need the ICU. So that's why it's important to social distance, stay inside. Well, not just stay inside, but social distance is the biggest thing. You can walk outside, but definitely let's social distance. So that's why this is so important. That's why everyone needs to do their part on this. Okay, so there's no vaccine. We know that. So the only thing we can do right now is two things: don't get infected and don't infect others. Again, the best thing you can do is still wash your hands. That's even better than antibacterial fucking. What's that little alcohol stuff you put on your hands? I don't know. What's it called? Yeah. Anyway, it's escaping me now. But here's why soap's so powerful. So the virus is encased in a layer of fat, basically, and the soap just breaks that down. It breaks it apart, and then the virus can't spread. So that's the big, makes your hands slippery, and with the mechanical motion of actually washing the hands, you actually rub the virus off physically. Okay, so that's where we're at with that. Again, I would check out the video. I'll link to it, but it's an 8-minute video. It's super, super well done. Very interesting with Our World in Data to do this. Our World in Data is something I've talked a lot about. I very much encourage you to check out Our World in Data. They've done a great job on compiling all this data. Holy shit. This fucking wasp. I'm not even kidding, bro. Damn, you know what? That thing's freaking me out. This thing might sting me at this point. Dude. Okay, we're going to be okay. We're going to keep going. It's not chill. Okay. So, holy shit. Okay, it's just sitting there. Damn, I apologize, people, but damn, I got to be worried for my safety here. That's not chill. Okay, we're good. You know what? I might put a little towel over my legs in case this thing fucking gets me. Or rather, to prevent it from getting me. Bear with me for 1 second here. Again, this is a live show. Shit happens. Okay, now it's fucking hot out and I have a towel over my legs. This is perfect. Okay, so Another interesting thing now I want to get into is there's been a lot of, you look at what the federal government's doing. Obviously, Trump's jackass, and it's kind of one misstep after another. They're starting to come online now, so it's a little better. But there's a very interesting video. Again, I will link to this by Lieutenant General Todd Semonite. He's the chief of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And he gave a plan. Basically, here's outlining how we are going to handle this whole capacity issue. That is, how are we going to handle the fact that we are likely going to overrun the healthcare system? And how can we prepare for that? So he laid it out. It's a 3-minute video, and I highly recommend you check it out. But I'm going to give you the rundown. Here's what he said. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, quick background, it's a federal agency under the Department of Defense that primarily oversees dams, canals, and flood protection in the United States, as well as a wide range of public works throughout the world. So they're operating under direct mission assignments from FEMA. FEMA, you hear about it every time a hurricane comes through. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's under the Department of Homeland Security. So the agency's primary purpose is to coordinate the response to a disaster that has occurred in the United States and that overwhelms the resources of local and state authorities. And their official mission statement is helping people before, during, and after disasters. I love mission statements. They get me fired up. Okay, so the states, here's how it's going to work. The states send assignments to FEMA, and then FEMA tells General Todd Semonite, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, what they need to do. So what they're doing, the states need to identify different like hotels, open spaces on where that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can come in and create basically an ICU in a very short period of time. And there's a direct quote that he says here: "This is an unbelievably complicated solution, and there's no way we are going to be able to solve this it's an unbelievably complicated situation, and there's no way we're going to be able to solve this with a complicated solution." I love that. Make him my product manager. Don't complicate. This is complicated. Let's just make it a dead simple solution. I freaking love that. So they have a standard design. They're going to go into existing facilities, like I said, hotels, college dormitories, and perhaps large spaces. They're going to go into these empty hotels. They're going to cut a contract. The state is going to set up a lease with that particular facility that they will take the building over. Then they will turn this into an ICU-like facility. So there's 4 parts to this, right? The state has to nominate facilities in priority order. The second thing, the Corps of Engineers has to be able to come in and modify the facility, create negative pressure, which negative air pressure, all that means is, I looked this up, don't worry. Negative air pressure just means air can come in, but then it gets expelled. It gets expelled like outside. It can't circulate within the room. So if you see a negative air pressure hospital room, there's negative air pressure. So there's air getting sucked into it, but it's not allowed to escape it. It's getting I don't know actually where it's getting expelled. I think often just outside, but it might go through a filter, then get sent outside. That's probably what it does. But that's all that negative air pressure means. Okay, the third, they're going to put supplies in there with the health. They're working with Health and Human Services. And again, this is alphabet soup of federal right here. And then the state is responsible at this point. The federal government has set it up. Now it's the state's responsibility to staff it. And he gave examples of, he was talking to Cuomo. This was about a week ago, by the way, this video came out, but it was just very to the point, very specific, and I loved it, and simple. So the Javits Convention Center in New York was one of the facilities that Mayor. Yeah, that was one of the facilities that was in. I believe it is in New York City. And that's one of the facilities that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has helped outfit to help people and increase the supply of hospital beds, and also prevent the spread, because these hospitals are likely going to get overrun. So he ends with this. He said, "This is not to take all the time in the world to do it. This is what it is." He says, "It's just barely the most important things we have to do, and be able to come up with a good enough solution." And boom, and he says, "I'll leave it there." So that's something the U.S. Army do. I think there's so much stuff going through the news, like it's hard to keep straight on what the fook is actually going on. But this is one thing that your federal government, if you're a U.S. citizen, is doing for you right now, and is working with the states to increase supply. Now, what he said on the video, he said a lot of the governors of these states are um, uh, uh, they expect a peak in mid-April. So what? It's the end of March right now. They don't expect a peak for 2 weeks. So that's what they're prepping up for. So they don't have much time. They don't have 2 months to build this shit. They got to build it fast. They got to go into existing facilities. They got to retrofit them. Boom, and bada bing, bada boom. Okay, so what we got next is we're going to talk a little bit about the markets here. Okay, so I always like to start with the S&P 500, again, a collection of the 500 biggest companies by market capitalization in the United States. So it closed on Friday. The markets are closed on the weekend. It closed on Friday at 2,541.47. So to put it in perspective, now I'm not trying to say this isn't a big deal, but I always just try to put this in perspective. To put it in perspective, this is where the market was in January 2019. Okay, so a little over a year ago, the market was at the level it is now. So that's a drop. That's still a drop of 24.9%, but it's not where it was. It was lower than that, obviously, but that's where it is now. So I like to think of it in terms of how far back did the market go. So when the global financial crisis happened, again, it happened in 2008, right? That's when it bottomed out. And it went back to the levels that it was previously at in 1996. So over a decade of gains wiped out. So we're at again, it's still a big fucking drop. This is still a big fucking deal. But just to put in perspective, we're a little over a year. So we're about 14 months behind where we're at the level where the stock market was about 14 months ago. Now, it did make a run in the second half of the week. This past week, I believe it was the second half. It did come up, but that's where it stands right now. So something I like listening to the people that have skin in the game with this stuff. So you'll see a lot of economic forecasters are like, people that write for people write for the New York Times. They go, oh, this is what we expect. This is what we expect. And those guys are pros. I'm not saying they're not smart guys, but the thing is, I really like listening to what people that are involved in the markets, not people that are just talking about the markets or are PhDs in the markets. What are people that are actually doing in the market? So I like looking at what people that manage money. What are those guys saying? Because the thing is, people sell their reputation for pennies on the dollar, but they won't sell their dollar for pennies on the dollar. Okay, and what I mean by that is someone can just fart out some analysis on what they think the economy is going to do, and maybe their reputation will be hurt, but in that time they'll get some, if they, especially in the case if they're saying something super dire, they might get on CNN, they might get some attention in the moment, and then later their reputation might not even be hurt. People won't even remember that they said it, and life goes on. But people that are operating in the markets and actually trading and working with clients' money, they can't afford to just say things. Now, I will caveat that with you got to be careful. Some hedge fund guys are saying shit explicitly to make their positions better, right? They're gonna say, and Bill Ackman, who I'm gonna talk about for a sec here, Bill Ackman was accused of this. So this guy made Bill Ackman of Pershing Square Capital. He made $2.7 billion, something on the order of $2.7 billion. Again, shooting from the hip here. All the show notes are going to be supplied. He made on the order of $2.7 billion, and it cost him about $27 million. It was a $27 million trade, and he ended up making $2.7 billion. Now, Matt Levine has this newsletter called Money Stuff where he talked about this. So really, it was a 5-year contract where Bill Ackman had to pay $27 million a month to keep it going. And I think he opened this position sometime in January because he thought shit was going to hit the fan. So he opened the position, then the market tanked and he made money off that. I think it was they were credit default swaps, which are basically if I think if a bond or a company goes bankrupt or something, then that you make money off of it. So that's what the trade was. And he was on MSNBC riffing on this shit, and he got some shit because he said, "Yo, the sky is fucking falling," and the market, this shit's really bad. The U.S. is not going to be prepared for this. Blah blah blah. The market tanked, not necessarily because he said that, but it certainly didn't help. He made a shit ton of money off of it, and then said, "Boom, no, I mean, now it looks like the market's rebounding, and the government's doing the right things." And you can never know where his head was at, but it is interesting. He had a good rundown, which I'll link to, just outlining all this shit. Of how, not only how he made the trade, but what he thinks about the coronavirus in general. So he's sending this out to his people that have money invested through him, right? So he's not just sending it out to so people can read it. He's sending it out to the people that actually have millions of their own net worth invested through him. So he has a vested interest to supply them with relevant, top-notch information. So I like reading what those guys are saying. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit more into, we're going to talk about the CARES Act in a little bit, but here's some fun facts. So 9 out of 11 biggest moves, this was as of March 24th, 9 out of 11 biggest moves in the stock market in the last decade have taken place in the last 12 trading days. So from March 24th to March, what is that? Damn, I can't do math right now. March 12th, March 12th to the 24th. 9 of 11 biggest trading days, both ups and downs, happened in those last 12 days. And over the course of the last decade, those are the biggest trading days. So that's it. The market's going absolutely bananas right now, both up and down. And a lot of people right now, so I talked to some homies about this. People reach out, they say, yo, I want to make moves. Delta's a hot one, right? And we're going to talk about them, their bailout package that was just signed. That's the CARES Act, the $2.1 trillion stimulus that we'll talk about. People are like, they're really excited to buy individual stocks right now, like, oil companies maybe, because oil's at an all-time low right now, which, as we've talked about before, it's not just because of the lower demand. It's also because OPEC and OPEC Plus, this is the body of countries, that Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries, which the U.S. is not part of. It's a price fixing thing. So all these countries that, Saudi Arabia is a big member. There's some African countries, there's some other Middle East countries. They price fix. So what they do is they reduce supply so that the price of oil goes up. That's another reason that there's also basically an oil war, and Saudi Arabia is going to war with Russia over oil prices, and they're really trying to squeeze them right now. So people are trying to baby buy oil companies right now. Fucking Delta is a hot one. People are making moves. So here's all I'm going to say with individual stocks. And this is what I personally do. I don't invest more than a few percent of your net worth in individual stocks. And the reason for this is because over time, you're not going to beat a simple index fund. And when I say over time, I mean on the order of a couple decades, right? Even the best investors in the world can't beat the index, let alone your ass on Robinhood trading from your couch or trading on the Fukin subway. Okay, so you're not going to Fukin beat the market. But it doesn't mean you won't make some good moves in a short period of time. Now, anyone can do that. But when you're really trying to build wealth, you're trying to do long-term gains. Your time horizon is a lot of people fucking 30 years, 40 years. So you don't care about long-term gains. So a lot of people, I think what they don't realize is that fucking, when you buy a stock, it's two things you got to do. Number one, you got to fucking buy it. So anyone can, buy low, right? Buy low. Sure, that's good. The other thing you got to do is you got to know when to sell it. So what you've done when you've purchased a stock is you've signed up for a contract with yourself to worry about that stock for the rest of your life until you sell it. Now, if it's a small amount, you don't need to worry about it, right? It's like, that's why I recommend you don't want to lose sleep over this shit. You don't want to lose sleep and be thinking about always looking at the market, because then what the fuck is the point? That's just costing you energy. It's costing you time. It's not worth it. So when you buy a stock, you also got to know when to sell it. Now, you always got to think about that. So, but if you don't own that much of it, if you don't really care, if you're just kind of doing it for fun, which I go for it, have some fun. I'm not saying you can never buy individual stocks. I do it too, but I don't do it anymore that is going to make me worried about what the price of that thing is. And also I also recommend don't buy a stock if you're just going to look to flip it in a year. Warren Buffett says this. He only buys things that he plans basically holding for life, right? He only looks into buy companies, not for a quick flip, but he buys shares because he wants to own that share for a long period of time. And if you have that attitude towards it, you're going to buy it and you're not going to check it every day. I've been there. I've been checking. I've been in that situation. It's not fun. It's not worth it. Go do other things with your fucking time. That's my hot take there. I'm not even going to recommend individual stocks. See what your uncle says. Fukin. Okay. So here we go. we're going to talk about the CARES Act. This is that $2.1 trillion dollar stimulus package that was passed. What was it? First the Senate, yeah. Then it went to the House, I believe, and then it was just signed yesterday on Friday by President Trump. So boom, it's passed. And we're going to talk about a little about what it means for you. So you're likely going to get $1,200. So the CARES Act is called the coronavirus. So you won't even, you know what? It's hard. People don't say the name of these fucking things. It took me forever to find what's the name of the bill. And I'll link to the official Congress website, which says the name of the bill. But it's like you can't find the fucking name of the bill. Like all these, like New York Times, Wall Street Journal. It took me to fucking go to the bowels of the internet to find what's the fucking name of this thing. So it's shortened to the CARES Act, but it's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So it's a $2.1 trillion bill. It's the largest stimulus package in U.S. history. Now, you're going to see a lot of hot takes on this shit over the course of the next few months, 6 months. Even you've already seen hot takes where people are saying this is the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the United States. This is the airlines getting bailed out. This is X, Y, Z. This is big corporations getting bailed out. So here's the thing I'm going to say with that. I'm going to be very careful. This was just passed yesterday. Let's see what fucking happens. So what happened in 2008, people had a right to be pissed. These fucking companies that got their asses bailed out because they were making dog shit investments, they got their asses bailed out, and they got their asses bailed out because many people say if we did not do that, many experts say if we did not do that, the economy would have shat itself and regular Americans would have been fucked. Now, what they did though, they then gave themselves fucking huge ass bonuses, right? So they took taxpayer money and they fucking said, "Oh, you had a great fucking year. Here's, $50 million for a bonus," which is ludicrous. And I'm not defending that for a microsecond. What I am saying is, before we have the hot takes, and I've already seen some of them on Twitter, there was this hardo professor of, I think it was I forget. I retweeted his ass, but I retweet commented because I was like, dude, he was just saying $2.1 trillion, stimulus going to the airlines. Like, this is just a bailout of corporations. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's too early to tell what the fuck is going on. Like, let's let this settle for a bit before, and I'm not even going to give an official opinion on this yet because it just was fucking passed yesterday. We got to see what ends up happening with the money. How is this actually used? Let's wait and see. But I'm going to give you the details on what this fucking what it's looking like. Okay, but first I want to talk a little bit about. So in 2008, there were two major bills that were passed when shit hit the fan. So when Bush was still in office, there was you may have heard TARP, right? It's the Troubled Asset Relief Program. This was ended up being around $426 billion in $426 billion bailout, for lack of a better word. Then Obama. So remember, Obama took the oath. What was that? January 21st, 2009. In the middle of this shit. So when he came in, he then passed another stimulus package, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and that was $787 billion. So I think people forget at the time, and I was a little munchkin, so I didn't know shit, but I remember at the time people were fucking livid, especially the Republicans, that Obama, that Obama was doing this, that passed a big fucking bill. It's like giving away all this money, spending taxpayer money, giving it to rich people. People forget fucking Bush had $426 billion of his own with TARP, right? And TARP was all about buying these bad assets and get them off the company books. So the government was buying off these dog shit loans, basically, to get them off the company books. Now, no one was up in arms, and Obama does a similar thing, and he gets absolutely shat on. What's interesting about the CARES Act, it's very impressive that we got another B. It's very impressive. I don't know if impressive is the right word, but there's basically the Senate passed it 96-0. The House is like, all on board, and there was a little bit of kerfuffle, but everyone, there's basically some bipartisan shit right now, which I think is really remarkable. So that's interesting. 2.1 trillion. Yeah, and something I want to talk about. I don't know enough about this, and I promise to do another show. Is what are the ramifications of just printing all this money? And because some of it is basically, it's not printed explicitly, but we're there's some fancy shit that's going on that I don't fully understand, but basically, it's adding to the deficit. We are borrowing from our future selves. We're borrowing from our current selves because we're lowering the value of the dollar. Now, what happened in 08 with all the stimulus was we didn't see inflation. There's billions of dollars injected in the economy, and we didn't see inflation. And everyone's like, well, holy shit, we don't have inflation. Why don't we always print money? Well, this is all quite new. It was only barely over a decade ago that we started doing like this quantitative easing shit, which is the government putting money, like buying securities, or buying the Fed buying treasuries to pump money into the economy. This is all a fairly new thing. So we don't exactly know the ramifications, but people think, oh well, let's just keep printing money. It's worked in the past. Well, we don't. We're in some weird territory here. And Howard Marks has spoken about this, legendary investor of Oak Tree Capital, and he says we don't really know the ramifications of this, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about him. But okay, here's the deal. Individuals. So this is the biggest thing that's gonna this stimulus bill that's gonna affect you personally. Besides the fact maybe keep you employed at your job with some of these business loans. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention. So a lot of this stimulus, you got $2.1 trillion giving it away. A lot of these are loans. Right now they're low interest. They're loans backed by the fucking government, right? But they are loans. They end up paying. These companies have to pay. For the most part, have to pay this stuff back. For the vast majority of the money that's going out, the taxpayer dollars, these companies have to pay it back. With TARP, that was the Troubled Asset Relief Program. The companies paid it back, the $426 billion. They paid it back with interest. Now, the interest was about 0.6%. So it was arguably the government lost money, right? Because it didn't beat the rate of inflation. So they were paid back less than the rate of inflation. So these companies got very good loans. And that's what's going to happen with this, right? The thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand about the stimulus stuff is that we are just giving them the money away. Now, yes, you can say a low interest loan is in part doing that, right? But it's not that you're giving them here company A, here's $500 billion, boom, do whatever you want with it. No, that's not how this fucking works. They have to pay it back, and there's also stipulations about what they can do with the money. For example, the airlines that are getting $58 billion in total, they cannot do stock buybacks. And half of that money has to go to is a grant. So half of it's a loan, half of it's a grant that goes to paying the employees of about 700,000 airline employees. So that money doesn't have to be paid back. I believe it's going straight to keep the employees on payroll. There's 700,000 that work in the airline space. Keep them on payroll. That's what that money's for. And also there's a governing body. Of course, there's a governing body. There's a governing body that's going to like a general, whatever, not a postmaster general, but a czar or whatever. Someone's going to oversee this shit. And all these loan terms are going to be made public. So we're going to be able to see every single fucking company that got their asses bailed out. And that they will be paying the loans back, unless they go fucking bankrupt. But that's where we're at. So again, it's not the U.S. taxpayers giving them $100 billion, boom, boom, no, the money comes back. So careful of the hot takes that say that, because I'm not saying it's a good thing what's going on. Ideally, no one gets fucking bailed out. Ideally, these companies have enough cash reserves to not have to get bailed out. But the reality of the matter is, if you don't do this, bad shit can happen. It will cascade through the entire economy. So it's a bit of a tough situation. Now, I'm going to say another thing, and this is me kind of riffing here, but it's a little bit off what Howard Marks says, so I don't feel like I'm going too far off the record here. We are doing a lot of we're doing a lot of shit over the course of the last decade with 08 and now this. We're doing a lot of shit where we're bailing companies out and bailing big businesses out by giving them loans. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but what I am saying is, think about the minds of these CEOs of these big companies. If they know that if a major disaster comes, they will get bailed out by the government, do you think that maybe they're going to be a little less cautious, have a little less cash on hand, be a little more dangerous? That's what worries me about this. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. What I am saying though is it should be a little worrisome to how it's going to make these business owners think. I know even personally, the way it makes me think, that I tell people keep about 6 months of cash liquid. So 2 months in your checking, 2 months in a savings account, 2 months in like a safety net account. Safety net, Betterment has one that splits your portfolio between 85% bonds, 15% stocks. So that's basically the principle's not going to change much. You're not going to earn much money on it, but if shit hits the fan, you have the money there. All of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I've been doing this, keeping 6 months just to be extra safe, and I know that if shit hits the fan, the government's going to come give me a check for $1,200, which the government is going to do. Maybe am I going to be a little less cautious? Maybe am I going to have 3 months of cash on hand? I'm not personally going to do that, and I highly don't recommend you do that. Never count on other people, especially the government, as little as you possibly can. Okay. You want to protect yourself. You never know if the government's going to keep doing this. But I am saying, doesn't it make you think a little bit different that the government is maybe going to help you keep your job or give a interest-free loan to the company that employs you, give you a $1,200 cash right to your bank account? Are you going to be a little less careful and maybe not have as much of a day fund? So this is the type of thing that scares me about what this can do and kind of the effects it can have on how people think about this shit. Now, again, a lot of the people getting this money, they absolutely fucking need it. They can't, and many people, and there's disputes on this, but a lot of people can't afford like a $400 emergency charge, which I don't know how true. Okay. Well, we got a quick question. I like it. Jack Lucas, are bonds even worth it? So I'm gonna answer this because I just saw it. Thanks for bubbling that shit up, Charlie. Appreciate that. Again, I'm back channeling with Charlie Finley. I can't look at the chat right now, but everyone who's in it, I love it. I think we know we got Jack in there. So are bonds even worth it? Yeah, but I mean, yeah, they're gonna be safer generally. I mean, you can do dog shit junk bonds, but generally, bonds are going to be safer, and the principal value of the bond, the principal value is likely to not degrade as much as stocks, right? As much as equities. So if you have a portfolio that's 85% bonds and 15% stocks, and shit hits the fan, it's not going to go down as much. So bonds are absolutely they're absolutely important, but bond is a big thing, right? Does it mean there's super risky bonds, and you can buy bonds from fucking Apple and Berkshire Hathaway. You can buy bonds from fucking, some dog shit company that's going to go bankrupt soon. So, junk bonds, which have a higher interest rate, but they're more risky. So, they're not all created equal, but yes, generally, bonds, they're worth having in the portfolio. Again, this is why I recommend Betterment, a robo-advisor. It allows us to make it very easy. You don't have to think about a lot of this shit. It makes it very, very easy for you. Okay. So here's what the deal. If you made less, now I'm finally getting to the point here. If you made less than $75K in 2019, you'll receive a full $1,200 from the U.S. government. It will be deposited to your bank account that was used, where you got your tax refund. And if it doesn't have one on file, they will mail you a check. Now, if you haven't filed your 2019 taxes, it will use your 2018 income. So I think the way this works is if you've made a shit ton of money in 2019 but didn't in 2018, you could not file 2019, which they pushed the deadline back, and some states have as well, but they've pushed the deadline back for filing your taxes to July 15th. So it's usually April 15th, it's now July 15th. So you could wait if you made less money in 2018 to get this $1,200, I believe. But I'm going to link to Washington Post has a good post on this about, to see exactly if you qualify. So any reduced checks will go out to individuals making up to $99,000 a year. So the payment amount falls by $5 for every $100 in income above $75,000. So as soon as you make over $75,000, you'll get less of that $1,200. So married couples are eligible for a $2,400 check as long as their adjusted gross income is under $150K a year. Bada bing. Yeah, Washington Post piece, I already talked about that. Ooh, also, which I do not recommend doing this, but I have not seen anyone talk about this. I found it buried in an Investopedia piece on the stimulus package. It said this: the plan allows people to take special disbursements and loans from tax advantage retirement funds of up to $100,000 without facing a tax penalty. So it also waives the required minimum distribution rules for 401k plans and IRAs, and the 10% penalty on early withdrawals up to $100,000 from 401ks. Account holders would be able to repay the distributions over the next 3 years and be allowed to make extra contributions for this purpose. These measures apply to anyone directly affected by the disease itself or who faces economic hardship as a result of the pandemic. So I think you have to qualify for it, right? You don't just not everyone gets to do this, but it is something. If shit really hits the fan and you really need, and you've been saving in your 401k and IRA, you can withdraw without penalty from it. Now, I highly encourage you, if you can avoid it, to not do this, because you're going to be selling at fire sale prices. The markets are down. You're going to be selling for, oh shit, we got the wasp back. I'm not fucking around. God damn it, bro. The fucking wasp. Okay, we're good. You're going to be selling at fire sale prices. So if you can avoid it, do not sell, do not fucking sell, do not sell, do not withdraw from your 401k, because the way to make money in the stock market is to stay in it as long as possible and to not withdraw when shit hits the fan. Now, not everyone can do that, but that's why I recommend having 6 months of cash on hand so that you don't need to tap into your investment accounts and sell at dog shit prices. Okay. So let's talk a little about the airlines. Let's talk a little bit more about what's in this actual 2.1 trillion. Okay. So the airline, I actually already talked about that. Did that. Okay, so the Wall Street Journal had an interesting breakdown. So here's how it basically breaks down. So it's 451 billion is going to loans to businesses, 349 small business loans, 349 billion, 117 billion to hospitals and veterans care, 301 billion to household payments. Those are those payments that you'll be getting $1,200. 221 tax deferrals and deadlines. 221 billion. 250 billion is going to unemployment insurance. 150 billion in aid to states, and 198 billion other, 25 billion public transit. So looking in a little more in the details here. So the expansion of unemployment benefits to include people furloughed, gig workers, and freelancers. Benefits increased by $600 per week for a period of 4 months. Direct payments to families, which we've talked about. Hospitals, healthcare systems, and providers will receive over 130 billion. The 500 billion fund for loans, the $500 billion fund for loans to corporate America will be overseen by an inspector general and a congressional panel. Every loan document will be public. And we talked about the cash grants, and the state and local governments receive 150 billion. And you may have heard of this guy now, Thomas Massie. Now, Thomas Massie was the reason that this bill got delayed for a little bit. He was the one that wanted to call for a quorum to be able to vote on it in the House. Which means people had to come back. So people had left to go with their families, go home, social distance. But he said, no, we got to bring people back to call this vote. So some people actually ended up going back because they thought he would be able to do that. Turns out they were able to pass it without all the House coming back. But I do think it's worth now. I want to go through with what his reasonings were, because I think they're interesting about what why he was delaying the vote. So I'm going to read. He had a tweet thread on this. I'll link to it. But here's what he said. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. So this guy's he's representative out of, I believe, Kentucky. Damn, we got someone making noise over there. They don't know I'm recording a podcast over here. Shit, we'll turn that gain down. Okay, so he says this. He says, I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and I take that oath seriously. This is from Thomas Massie. In a few moments, I will request a vote on the CARES Act, which means members of Congress will vote on it by pushing yes or no or present. The Constitution requires that a quorum of members be present to conduct business in the House. Right now, millions of essential working-class Americans are still required to go to work during this pandemic, such as manufacturing line workers, healthcare professionals, pilots, grocery clerks, cooks, chefs, delivery drivers, auto mechanics, and janitors, to name just a few. Is it too much to ask that the House do its job just like the Senate did? I want to go in here. There is something to the fact that, if the government, people in government are starting to get sick and fucking dying and can't do their job, I think that might only make more chaos. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But he said, I'm not delaying the bill like Nancy Pelosi did last week. The bill that was worked on in the Senate late last week was much better before Speaker Pelosi showed up to destroy it and add days and days to the process. Again, this is him speaking. This bill should have been voted on much sooner in both the Senate and the House, and it shouldn't be stuffed full of Nancy Pelosi's pork. Okay, so this guy, yeah, he's a Republican going hard on Pelosi, including 25 million. Oh, we'll skip that. Fuck it, we'll read it. Including 25 million for the Kennedy Center, grants for the National Endowment of the Humanities and Arts, and millions more. Other measures that have no direct relation to the coronavirus pandemic. That 25 million, for example, should go directly to purchasing test kits. The number one priority of this bill should have been to expand testing availability and creation of tests so that every American, not just the wealthy and privileged, have access to testing. We have shut down the world's economy without adequate data. Everyone, even those with no symptoms, needs immediate access to a test. This bill creates even more secrecy around a Federal Reserve that still refuses to be audited. It allows the Federal Reserve to make decisions about who gets what, how much money will print, with no transparency. If getting us into $6 trillion more debt, and this is where I ask the same question. Again, I don't know how this shit works. I need to do more research personally, but it does make you wonder. If getting us into $6 trillion more into debt doesn't matter, then why are we not getting $350 trillion more in debt so that we can give a check of $1 million to every person in the country? The stimulus should go straight to the people rather than being funneled through banks and corporations like this bill is doing. 2 trillion divided by 150 million workers is about 13,000 per person. That's much more than this 1,200 per person check authorized by this bill. So that was his hot take on why he was slowing this down. Maybe I gave him too much airtime here. But it is an interesting thing. Like, if we're just going to add 6 trillion, and he said 6 trillion to the debt, I don't exactly know. I think it's because this stimulus is 2.1 trillion, but more than that is authorized. So it's possible that more is going to be added to the debt. So it's just it's a super interesting question. And again, the whole concept of money, even to begin with, we were on the gold standard until the 70s, right? So you used to be able to turn your money in and get gold back. I don't think not many people actually did it, but it was backed by something. Now it's backed by the faith and power and trust of the U.S. government. So it's not backed by anything material. It's backed by the U.S. government. It's fascinating how the modern money works, but that's the reality of it. Again, this is something I'm really interested in. Why not just keep printing money? Well, I think there is a difference between this guy says 6 trillion, 350 trillion. There is a difference, right? One is vastly bigger than the other. So I'm not a mathematician, but that's my hot take. And the WASP is fucking back. God damn it. Okay, we're okay here. Okay, so now we're going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about. We're going to talk about misinformation spreading on Fukin. Fukin COVID. Oh damn, we got homie. Damn, this chat's blowing up. I can't really follow all this shit right now. I'm just checking in on the first time. Financier advisings, yeah, nice. Lars, where's the no gradient merch coming? Lars, keep beasting, sir. You're my boy. Lars, guys in the chat, is one of the homies. I think he's from New Zealand. He hit me up after one of my episodes early on in the no gradient history. He sent me an email. It was fucking epic. He's like, dude, love the show. And I never met this guy in my life. It meant a lot. Anyway, Lars, you're a beast. So I'm pretty sure that was you, Lars. Yeah, that was Lars. Yeah, the high school kid, the biker. Yeah, you're chill. Anyway, yeah, Charlie, keep bubbling up those questions. Again, Charlie Finley, the producer, is in the chat. He will bubble up questions should you have them, and I'll get to them when I can. Again, I like to stay in the flow. I like to keep going through this shit. So we're going to talk about WhatsApp misinformation. So this is information that's spread on WhatsApp, and they've had problems with this before. And then just to give you we're going to talk a little bit more about some predictions on not predictions we might be, but about the virus. Then we're going to go talk a little bit more about the markets. Then the Economist had an interesting piece. Snake, thanks for sharing. So that's what lies ahead. But let's dive into this WhatsApp stuff. Okay, so this was shared. This is an article shared. This was an article that CNN did. And Benedict Evans has an epic newsletter, so I found it there. So I'm going to read some quotes from it. So it is clear that a lot of false information continues to appear in the public sphere. In particular, we need to understand better the risk related to communication on end-to-end encryption services. European Commission Vice President Vera Jourova, I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Who oversees the bloc's efforts to fight disinformation sent a statement Tuesday. Okay, so here's the thing. WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. And you'll hear a lot. You're going to hear a lot about end-to-end encrypted shit. You're going to hear more about it. This is something that's not fucking going away. Messaging. This is going to keep being a major issue where people, the government simply can't get access to encrypted messaging. So the app WhatsApp, it's the largest encrypted chat messaging app on the planet. I think they got about 2 billion users. Over that, they recently passed 2 billion users, like monthly active users. So these aren't just people that have installed it and walked away. So Facebook gets a lot of shit. And yeah, they do. Yeah, they're not. I'm not going to say they're the best company. What I think is underrated is though they're single-handedly responsible for providing secure private communication to more people on the planet than any other company in the world, and that's huge. Private communication is, in my belief, a right. Now, it allows bad actors to perform bad things, but it also allows good people to have private conversations that people, not the government nor anyone else, gets to listen to. So this is it's a tough debate. But ultimately, I think the pros outweigh the cons. Again, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs I think that's Thomas Sowell quote. There's no solutions, only trade-offs. This is one of those. So here's the WhatsApp issue. So the WhatsApp, a lot of disinformation is spreading in WhatsApp. So you may think, in the US, this isn't a big deal. Like, people aren't part of big WhatsApp groups, like huge WhatsApp groups, and misinformation is fucking spreading. But in a lot of other countries, people will get a lot of their information this way from friends, family. People forward you something, then you forward it to more people. And there's a lot of misinformation being spread on around coronavirus on WhatsApp. Now here's the thing with end-to-end encryption. Facebook can't see those messages. They can't moderate them. They can't say, this is wrong, we're not going to allow you to send it. And that's a good thing, but it has a trade-off where they can't detect a lot of the. So I think what they can do is they can detect links, and if a link is known to be spreading, if it's linking to something that is just fake news, then fuking, then they can detect, and before you send it, they still allow you to send it, but before you send it, they can they'll present you with, like a warning, basically, that this is likely not correct information, blah blah blah. But the problem is WhatsApp, a lot of the misinformation is spread in text, just text and a picture. You send a homie a picture of a graph and some text with it. They have no access to that information. There's nothing they can do because it is end-to-end encrypted between you and your homie and your group mates. This is the beauty of end-to-end encryption. No one can fucking read it. Not a government, not Facebook, not anyone. And it's a very, very. This is the trade-off. So this actually happened. You might have heard it. It's happened in India, where so it said last year WhatsApp imposed limits on how many times a message could be forwarded after viral hoax messages in India contributed more than a dozen lynchings in 2018. Users can now only forward one message to 5 chats. A group sizes are limited to 256 members. Woog says these measures have decreased forwards on the service by 25%. Tough problems. We're talking about people getting lynched in India. Like, this is based on viral false information that people are spreading. Now that is a bad thing. Should we try to limit that as much as possible? Yes. Is that worth the trade-off of allowing Facebook to read every single one of your messages and allowing the government? If Facebook can read it, that means the government can. And especially in countries where you can't trust the government. If you're not in a first world country, if you're in if you live under a dictatorship, authoritarian regime, you rely on WhatsApp. You rely on these messages to be completely secure, that not even fucking Facebook has access to them, because if they have access to them, that means they can turn them over to the government, full stop, and they will, because they have to comply with local laws. So there was a manifesto that Mark Zuckerberg did, and I wrote about it on No Grading a little while ago. But basically, he said that Facebook is moving to a social network that is completely private and encrypted. So he says his kind of 10-year, it was like a 10-year plan, was people are moving more to groups and sharing with specific groups rather than kind of the old days you'd post a funny picture yourself and then share with everyone. Now a lot of it's like you're in smaller groups on Facebook. You're sharing in group chats and stuff like that. So Facebook, he said, is going to move to a world where a lot of this stuff is okay. I love this question from Sawyer. Respect. Okay, so I'll get to that, Sawyer. I love it. I'll get to that, and we're gonna keep going here. But Mark Zuckerberg said he's trying to move his company to a situation where the vast majority of the products on it are completely encrypted and private. Now, this opens the doors for bad things. That means that, for example, child porn is a big issue on online services, right? The U.S. government works with these private tech companies to smack down on it as much as possible. The issue is, if these groups are completely encrypted and Facebook doesn't even have access to the data, that allows bad actors to spread more child porn or plan terrorist attacks or do X or do Y or do Z. It just goes on and on. So that's the trade-off, right? Again, there's no solutions. There's only trade-offs. So people say, "Oh, Facebook's reading your message, blah blah blah." Okay, well, fine. They'll make it encrypted. Now what? Now they can't police it. So it's I overall do believe that it is a net good. The question is, though, how big do you let these encrypted groups get? And WhatsApp was limiting the amount of messages you can forward. So it is interesting to limit the groups on WhatsApp to 256 members, because imagine if you had a fully encrypted private group that was like more than 256 members. What if a whole terrorist network of 2,000 people could all join the group? No one could touch it, and they could plan all this heinous shit. That's a very reasonable concern, and these are trade-offs. Okay, Sawyer had a question. How's WhatsApp so secure if if someone he knows was given I'm going to protect the identity a little bit here. If someone he knows was given private keys during his onboarding at Facebook. Now he the key in a WhatsApp message, the key is generated locally on the device, never leaves the device. So he was probably given a key to some server access thing, but he's not given a key that there's not just one WhatsApp key. Everyone who has a WhatsApp device has their own key generated, and it encrypts your message before they send out, and then other people have the public key that can unlock it, but no one else can. No one else can unlock it. That's the way it works. So there's no way. There's no way these employees at Fukin Facebook have access to this. Now, I will say, I shouldn't say there's, because we thought the U.S. government wasn't stooping on millions of people. So I'll say this. Here's the thing with WhatsApp, because I've been giving it a lot of credit. WhatsApp's not open source. We don't know what they're doing under the hood, but we can reasonably say that it's likely that Facebook can't read your messages, simply because they're in situations where they can't even stop misinformation. The governments are telling them to do this, and they're like, "Yo, we can't." If they could, the governments would come down on their asses hard, but they literally can't. Technically, they can't from a technical aspect. Now, if you're really worried about your messages, Open Whisper Systems has an app called Signal. It's not as popular as WhatsApp, but WhatsApp uses the same encryption that Open Whisper Systems uses. Open Whisper Systems uses something that has the Signal protocol, and someone that actually worked on WhatsApp, Facebook acquired WhatsApp, they left Facebook, got pissed off because of what Facebook was doing. He was like one of the big guys behind the Delete Facebook movement, and he gave $50 million to the Signal Foundation, which it's kind of funny. And WhatsApp uses that encryption protocol, and that's an open source app. When an app is open source, that means you can look at the code, you can audit it, you can see what the app is actually doing. On WhatsApp, we can't see what it's doing. You can do some things to look at the code. You can decompile it and get a little bit of information that way, but you really can't. You really don't know what's going on under the hood there. So that's where we're at there. Okay, so we got Trevor Bedford. This is a guy that was early on. He was working with the Seattle flu study, which Seattle flu study, let's wind the clocks back. They were one of the early groups that were Fukin calling shit out, being like, "Yo, we got something on our Fukin hands here with this whole COVID-19 thing." They were doing early stats and publishing their results against the wishes of the CDC and the FDA. They were getting hampered by the federal government, and they were publishing results and said, "Fuck it, we're going to do it anyway." So these were the early people raising the alarm. So Trevor Bedford has done some work with him. So anyway, so he has a interesting prediction. So he says that we should see occasional mutations to the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 that allow the virus to partially escape from vaccines or existing herd immunity, but that this process will most likely take years rather than months. So some people are worried that, well, what if this thing keeps mutating? One vaccine won't just get rid of it. So he says this will take years. His prediction is that this will take years, not months. Again, incomplete information. We don't know what the deal is here, but that is his reasonable. This guy's an expert, and that's his reasonable guess at this point with the information he has. So that's a good thing if it takes years to mutate. That's better than if it takes on the order of months. That means the vaccine can work a lot more effectively. And again, he says, or existing herd immunity. Herd immunity means if enough people have gotten it already, they can't spread it because they've already gotten it, so they can't spread it. So that when you hear herd immunity, that's what that means. Damn, it is fucking hot out here. We got some water down there, but we're gonna keep going. Okay, Charlie, love it. Keep coming with the questions, Brother Beast. I'll get to them when I can. Everyone in the chat, you're my fucking people. Love you. Let's keep riffing here. Okay, so here's what we're gonna talk about now. So Patrick O'Shaughnessy, I believe that's his pronunciation, works for a company, works for an asset management place. firm called Canvas. He had an interesting blog post. I'm going to read through it. Some more talk about the market stuff. And again, I'm going to talk a lot about the markets here because I'm going to talk about shit on here that I think is interesting to me, that I want to learn about and want to read about, that I'm going to tell you guys. So this is the stuff that I'm not talking about this shit because partly I do think it's important, and I do think people are worried about the state of the markets, and it's important that we understand how the markets work because the markets touch everything and everyone on the face of the earth and all of humanity. That's how this shit works. So they are very, very important. It's the economy, stupid, right? That's what it comes down to. Now, the stock market doesn't necessarily mean, if the stock market's doing well, it doesn't mean that everyone's doing well, but it is a pretty damn good indication. And it's interesting to see what's going on there. So I'm going to go on and just quote some of the things he said. Again, this is Patrick O'Shaughnessy. He's an asset manager at Canvas. He says, and I'll link to all this stuff. Again, I link to all this stuff. And if you become a Patreon supporter, that's $5, at least $5 a month. You can do that right now. There's a link in the description. You can get access to all these notes right now. Only view access, not edit access. You have this whole access to this Google Doc. So if you want all this information, I literally write all my jokes here. So I'm a total fraud. Ariane called me out. He said, this isn't shooting from the hip. You're reading from a script. Well, come on, Habibi. Sometimes you see me look up. Okay. So he said, okay, some of the things. So he said, full out panic and liquidation has been clearly the wrong strategy in past winters. So the name of this piece, by the way, is Blizzard, Winter, or Ice Age. So that's what he's referring to the market. So is it just a blizzard? Is it a full on winter, or is it a total ice age? It's going to be a meltdown for 5 years. So he says, so complete liquidation and panic has been bad in past winters. What does that mean? That means selling all your shit when shit is hitting the fan is not a good strategy, especially for younger investors with, or those with years of cash on hand. Here's my recommendation: if your job is not, if you're in a good financial position right now and you don't sell your assets because you think you can time the market, or you think like you're worried that it's going to take a decade to recover. I will go on record and say this shit's not going to take a decade to recover, but who the fuck knows? So I won't. Well, I'll go on record with that. Who knows? But don't do it. If you have enough cash on hand, use that, and you have a steady income coming in. Keep using that. You don't need to fuck around with your shit. Okay. So he said, with the S&P 500 down nearly 35% from its peak, at the time of this recording, it's 29%, but at the time of this publishing, it was 35% from its peak, we faced the swiftest drawdown on record. For many, it has already been incredibly difficult to stick with a long-term expectation. Most behavioral investing errors happen in periods of uncertainty like the one we face today. We are now in one of those scary periods where returns are determined as much by investor behavior and psychology as by fundamental outcomes. In periods of psychological market stress, data, evidence, and process are critical. We turn to that data to build expectations of where we may go from here. Again, where does the stock price come from, right? The stock price comes from expected future earnings. That's basically where it comes from. You expect a company's going to make a lot of money. That stock price has that baked in. That's basically where it comes from. So he's saying, when you're valuing your stock, you're like, well, their earnings are increasing 10% a year and the market's increasing this percent a year. You can make a best guess on how good the company's going to do. Right now, he's saying that's not how people are valuing these equities. What he's doing is it's based on fear, it's based on doubt. And when you have a situation like that, you're not looking at the fundamentals. You're not looking at what's the actual the value of these companies. You're acting out of fear. So he says, his expectation, we expect 6% a year for growth stocks, still quite low despite the drop, and 13% a year for value stocks. This is the highest prediction we've seen for value since the highest ever in March of 2009, a prediction which proved close to accurate when the model predicted a return of nearly 70% a year. So because the asset prices are down, if you get in now, there's a higher chance that you'll make more money. So now here's what I'm not saying. Listen. Here's the deal, and thank you, Snake. I'll get to that question. Thank you, Barlow. I appreciate that. I just want to finish this point here. People are like trying to make moves in the market right now. So, and I'm going to keep repeating this. I'm going to keep repeating it for the next year, however long we're going through this shit. And I'll tell you what I'm doing. I am sticking to the same financial plan that I was doing before. So I don't have a full-time job right now. Well, I work for myself right now. My income is not as, let's call it, not as steady as it was before. But The reality is, if most people have a steady income, they're contributing to their 401k, they're contributing to their IRA. Keep doing that. Keep contributing to your 401k. Don't change the plan or try to time the market or do any of this fancy shit. That's not how it's not how you're going to win here. You're going to win by not having to sell your fucking assets at dog shit prices. So if you have a big buffer of cash and you have a lot in your safety net, you've got some in your checking account, you've got some in your savings, and you don't have to worry about having to tap into your retirement or tap into just your general investments, that is how you will win. That's the single best thing you can do in this situation. Another way you can win is by helping your friends, helping your family, helping your grandparents, helping your parents, helping people cope with shit, helping them order food, helping them get food delivered, maybe shopping for groceries for them, social distancing. But those are the types of things you can think about. The vast majority of people don't think about, oh, the markets are down, this is how generational wealth is born. Dude, that's a fool's errand. Stick to the plan. Keep contributing. Oh, another thing that people I don't think about, like, shit, I'm not getting in the market right now. You actually are getting. If you have a 401k or an IRA, and you have, which a lot of people do, your dividends are getting reinvested automatically on the order of like every month around. So you are actually buying into the market automatically right now, even if you're not actually putting your own money in, because those dividends are money you get from owning stocks or bonds. That money gets you get dividends, it gets reinvested, it buys more. You get dividends from that. That's the whole thing of compounding interest, right? It goes up, you get dividends. Well, that's a part of it, at least. You get dividends, you buy more. So you're already buying more, even if you're not actually actively putting money in the market, which is a cool thing. So you're already doing it for free. Okay, let's keep going with what he was saying. With the country and world shut down, can we cross the chasm? Help businesses survive the revenue drought and reemerge on the other side? I believe that we can. I'm an optimist. I believe, again, this is O'Shaughnessy. This is a guy I'm quoting. I'll link to it in the show notes. I believe that we can. I'm an optimist. I believe in the resilience of people and of this country and the world. I believe that it is hard to bake this resilience and the human response into epidemic models. And so I am optimistic that a response to this menace will curtail the worst case outcomes and that we will avoid an ice age. Here's the thing. I think he's absolutely right. So I am long humanity. I think we are solving problems. I think if you look at where we were 100 years ago, we were in a hell of a lot better position in every single possible way possible, and we just need to keep doing it. We have a system that works. We have the scientific method. We have each other. We have the internet. We have a global world where we can share ideas. We can trade ideas. We can trade goods. We are on the right path. We are fucking good at solving problems. Now, we were caught a little bit flat-footed by SARS-CoV-2. I'll admit that. The U.S. especially, we weren't hit by SARS in like 2003, which hit some of Canada, didn't really freak us out. So we weren't as prepared as we could have been. But I'll tell you this: the death rate could have been so much higher with SARS-CoV-2, and we don't know how bad it's going to get. It will get worse. Very likely, it will get worse. But it's looking like it's safe to say we will come out of this. And what does that mean? We come out of this? I think the United States and many countries will never be caught short masks again. We will never be caught short ventilators again. We will never be caught short the necessary supplies we need to fight off a next pandemic. Now, Bill Gates has been talking about viruses for years. He's been saying this is the single biggest issue. It's microbes, not missiles, that are going to cause the death of tens of millions of people. People have been saying this for years, but now we've finally woken the fuck up. The economy is shut down. Shit is real. I believe that this is a wake-up call that we need. I believe that agencies that need to get more funding will get more funding. I believe the supply chains that need to be ready to spin up at a moment's notice to protect us from future viruses will absolutely get spun up at a moment's notice. In the future, should hit the fan. Maybe it happens in 10 years, maybe it happens in 20, maybe it happens in 40. Maybe it never gets to the point that SARS-CoV-2 is at now, because when it does happen, when we get a few cases of pneumonia, when we get a few cases of some vomiting or some diarrhea or some fucked up shit going on in some corner of the world, we're going to fucking launch on that shit, and we're going to be extra, extra, extra fucking careful in the future. Okay. And I think people will not be caught flat-footed again. We are all learning from this. We are all fucking learning. Oh my God, Nadav, you're a cave troll. Charlie, can you ban his ass? Anyway, just kidding. You can't ban him. He will be a moderator in the future, though. I didn't have time to do that. But I believe we will get through this, and I believe we'll be better for it. So this could have been a lot worse. In fact, I think Mother Nature gave us a gift. She could have really fucked us here. She could have given us a death rate of 50%, which is what Ebola is. She could have given us something that is super infectious and a death rate like Ebola, and it would have been fucking gnarly. That's not what we're at now. We're not at that level now. This is not Ebola. It's not the flu, but it's not Ebola. It's not even close to Ebola. But this is going to wake people the fuck up, and sometimes we need to get fucking woken up, right? This is how it works. Um, uh, so he ends with, but as Herbert writes in Dune, soon after the famous fear passage. Oh damn, there's an epic quote about fear. Okay, so there's this book called Dune. There's an epic passage in it. Fear is the mind killer. I would look it up. It's an epic quote. Fuck, let's see, what is it? I will look inside. I will let the fear pass over me and through me, and when it is gone, there will be nothing left, only me. Like, basically, yeah, it's an epic quote. I highly recommend you looking it up. I fucking was saying that shit to myself before I broke 2 minutes in the 800 like a total suffaka. Post grad, that was beast. I remember Fear is the Mind Killer. Pat Daly, thanks for turning me on to that quote. Snake, I think you read that book too, so appreciate you guys on the live chat. Okay, so he ends by saying, we must quickly embrace reality and seek to improve it. We must focus on the things in our control that we can make up as prices go down, that we can improve as things devolve. In our case, that means perfect execution, more research than ever, more transparent conversations than ever, more information sharing than ever, and a constant assessment and appropriate rebalancing of portfolios. I know everyone else is starting to do the same. Damn, now there's a spider. There's a jumping spider. I shit you not. Jesus Christ. More transparent conversation than ever. I know everyone else is starting to do the same, asking how they can help, how they can fight, how they can survive and advance better than before. I promise that everyone at OSOM, that's the place he works at, will be a small part in that fight. Beautiful. Okay, we got some questions here. Because we want to keep it going, and I know this is gonna be a long fucking show again. We got some questions here. Okay, as Dick's biggest fans and #1 supporters, what can we do to support him? Okay, so the biggest thing, honestly, I think the single biggest thing, it's not the monetary thing. I really think it's sharing it out. That's the biggest thing. That's going to move the needle most for me and Charlie right now on this project that we're putting a lot of fucking time into, and we really think we have something special here. So the biggest thing you can do, share it on LinkedIn. Thank you, Jonathan Healy, for fucking doing that. Share it on fucking Twitter. Share it on Facebook. Be like, yo, this show's interesting. If you think it's interesting, listen, don't be nice and share some shit out that you don't believe in. If you don't believe in this, or give me some fucking feedback. Don't just do it to do it. But that is the single best thing. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell people that you think will be interested in the show or like the format and think I'm giving it to you straight. No bullshit here. Me and Charlie really do our best efforts to do a really good fucking job. We do research, we do it well, we do it right. We really try to stick to facts. The other thing you can do is you can contribute on Patreon. The whole operation costs about $500 a year to maintain. We're getting about $25 in monthly donations. If you become a Patreon member, just a monthly, even something as low as $1 or $3, it means the world to me and Charlie. Half of it's going to Charlie, half of it's going to me. And we're still not covering our costs. That's okay. We're still early in this, but become a Patreon member. You also get access to the entire show notes, right? And I've talked about that before. You'll get access to every single thing on here that you can use for whatever you want to use it. Use it for your own research. Use it for But so every single thing, usually about 10 pages worth of shit. We got a neighbor putting shit out over there. Damn, I'm just yelling out here. Okay, Nadav, what are your thoughts on the Sawyer Micro versus the Mini? The Micro and the Mini are both dog shit water filters. I think the best one is the Sawyer OG. It's the fat one, it's an ounce, people, but it's so much better. You never have to worry about it. It lasts for years. Get the regular Sawyer. Okay. Hot question for VC tiers. Would you have kept on the trail if COVID happened then? I love that. Probably not. I mean, no, I don't think so. I don't know anything about. I haven't really read anything about it, but I don't think I would have because you're going into communities. Hi, Trail Magic. Like, I'm on the trail. I'm a professional hiker. Like, and then you just give everyone COVID in the small town. You leave, thank you, and then you leave 5 days later, the whole town's dead. Just kidding. But you could spread COVID that way. So I'm not in the business of fucking spreading shit just so I can get a good Instagram post at the end after a 2,600 mile hike. You know what I'm saying? I'll tell you what I am in it for. Getting an epic podcast at the end of that 2,600 mile. That is what I am in it for. We got 850 views in our PCT podcast. We had me, my sister, we had Bumblebee, we had fucking Monk, and we had fucking Half Facts. We had an epic show. It was an epic show. So we did do that, and that was epic. But no, I don't think I would have stayed on. Also, because it would have been a nice excuse for me to get off because I was a little bitch on the trail. No, I got hardened. After a while. Okay, so we're going to talk about thank you for the you know what, I got to move this umbrella because the sun is now on the computer. Just bear with me for 1 second. Here's what we're going to do when we come back. It's going to be 30 seconds. We're going to talk about the Howard Marks memo. I talk a lot about him. Damn, we got a lot of shit here. We're almost getting through it here. So we got the Howard Marks memo. Oh my God, all my papers are all over the place. Okay, we got the Howard Marks memo, another finance guy. He usually reserves these weekly updates, he says, for people that are investing to him, but he's making it public. He's really good. I really like reading his shit. Then we're going to look at the COVID tracking project. The US is up to 100,000 tests a day. You might not have heard that. We are fucking coming online and it's epic. So give me 1 second while I adjust this umbrella so my computer doesn't overheat. I love you all. Stay on the line. And we're back. Okay. And all around me, a familiar faces. Okay, we're back. Here we go. Howard Marks. Let's get to the Howard Marks shit. Again, all this shit I link to, people. Oh, damn. I'm missing some of the cover pages here. Let's see here. Some wind blew. Oh, you know what? Fuck. Stay on the line. We're all good. Some wind blew my papers away that I need right now. Thank you, people. Appreciate that. Oh, also another thing you can do, you can subscribe on YouTube and like the video. That also helps a lot. So we appreciate that as well. So for supporters, just to throw out the like, that'll help other people find it and subscribe so you get notified of future ones and helps the algorithm, helps us get the show out there. That's another thing you do. Thank you all. Really appreciate everyone that listens to this, especially we in the early stages. Dude, I fucking remember you listening right now, dude. And listen, I know the show's going to improve. We're still kind of a little all over the place, but the day one homies, the La Famiglias, that means a lot. Okay. So we got, Howard Marks memo. Let's riff on this. Let's get some water real quick. I'm going to turn the gain up so you can still hear me. So I turn that gain up. That's pretty beast. Oh, wow. You can hear me drink. Yeah. Goddamn extreme sport. We in North Carolina. We in Durham, North Carolina. It's fucking 80 degrees here, but we got the umbrella. We appreciate it. Okay. So here's the, again, Howard Marks memo, which I linked to all this shit. If you want it now, Patreon, $5 subscriber. Thank you. Okay. Here's the deal. So I'm going to go through some of the quotes here. So prohibiting movement on the part of people who have been diagnosed and tracking their movement through cell phones. So that's a possible short-term response. He starts out with some short-term responses that are possible. We got on March 17th. So I'm going to kind of throw some shit at you. These are just some kind of in no specific order, but just some interesting quotes that I want you that I think you'd appreciate. So on March 17th, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin warned that failure of the government to take appropriate action could take the unemployment rate to nearly 20%. By way of comparison, it reached 25% in 1933 during the Depression and hit 10% as a result of the global financial crisis in through 07, 09. Regardless of the action taken, it seems sure to rise substantially from the 50-year low of 3.5%. I think that's regardless, it seems to rise substantially from the 50-year low of 3.5% unemployment. So he also says, in recent years, observers have made a big thing out of the fact that a large percentage of Americans would be unable to respond to a $400 emergency. There's some disagreement on whether that's true, but clearly many people don't. Okay, the Fed has cut the short-term interest rate to zero, including a record emergency cut of 100 basis points on Sunday, March 15th. But unfortunately, the total reduction has been only 150 basis points, whereas past rate cut programs have amounted to roughly 500 basis points. So this is part of the issue with keeping interest rates low, is that when shit hits the fan, you can only lower them so much, right? So our interest rates were already low, and they help stimulate the economy. They're already low, so we can only drop it 150 basis points. We couldn't drop it by 500 basis points. So we had less. The economy was roaring, and our interest rates were still fucking low. That makes you wonder what the fuck we were doing. Oh, another thing. So I think the speed at which, so it took, I think, a month to get some of the speed at which the federal government has passed the stimulus bill, and the way the Fed the central bank of the United States, how quickly they've acted on that. They deserve a lot of credit. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it's the right or wrong thing some of these things are doing. What I am saying is the speed at which they did it is remarkable and is unprecedented in the history of the United States of America or any country on planet Earth. Okay, they deserve a lot of credit for what they're doing. It took a hell of a lot longer. Remember in 08 financial crisis, let the banks fail. Like there was a lot of back and forth. Like no, and Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and like it was a lot of back and forth. This has been real quick, and they've been acting quickly to get through a lot of the shit, which previously taken a hell of a lot longer. And during the Great Depression, the reason that lasted for so long is we didn't, we were kind of new to all this and we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And that lasted, it was like, what was that? Like over like a decade of just the economy just getting just roundhoused. So we've learned a hell of a lot since then. And yeah, it's interesting that I think the government deserves credit. So we have also continued actions by the Fed to encourage discount window loans. A key difference, you know what? We're not going to go into those details. Okay, let's make sure we got this right here. We don't need to get into stuff. Okay. All these appropriate actions, hopefully we'll see benefits from them more. The Fed and Treasury will do everything they think might help. Clearly, there's little interest in abstaining simply because expenditures will add to the deficit and debt. However, it's unfortunate that there was no appetite for refraining from stimulus and restocking the toolkit. This is important. However, it's unfortunate that there was no appetite for refraining from stimulus and restocking the toolkit during the period of prosperity that prevailed in recent years. No one knows whether that failure will inhibit the monetary and fiscal response. But I wish, for example, that we were cutting short rates from 5% to 1.5%. So when the economy was roaring, unemployment was all-time low, we passed fat-ass tax cuts. The Tax and Jobs Act, I think it was what it was called. It's like, that was not the right thing to do. We did not need, we should have saved that for, we were running at the deficit when the economy was doing well. This is the time, even John Maynard Keynes said this is even the time when the economy is doing well, that's when you pay down your debt. You don't just keep spending and spending and spending. All we're doing is borrowing from our grandchildren and our own kids. Okay. Fucking boomers. No, just kidding. Okay. So it's easy to say that something approaching panic is present in the markets. We've seen record percentage declines several times within the last month, exceeded since 1940 only by Black Monday, which was October 19th, 1987, when the S&P 500 declined by 20% in a day. This week and last included down days as follows: minus 7%, 9.5, 12, 5.2. You know what's funny? If the S&P 500 drops by more than 20%, trading stops for the rest of the day. It can literally only drop by a maximum of 20%. It's called a circuit breaker. We've talked about this before, but it's a way to prevent people from doing stupid shit because people are emotional. Okay. On the other hand, let's see. However, it's worth noting that every one of these declines was followed by similar gains. So these declines, he was talking about 4.9%, plus 9.3, plus 6. Given that almost all the biggest down days in the last 80 years were followed by up days, so far the strategy of buy the dips has continued to be in favor. That's fine as far as it goes, but it has nothing to do with a fundamental improvement. What this tells me is that optimism still hasn't been entirely eradicated and replaced by capitulation. Typically, the bottom is reached only when optimism is nowhere to be found. On the other hand, there's been a rush to cash. Both long positions and short positions have been closed out, a sure sign of chaos and uncertainty. Oh, God damn it, this wasp is back. This thing is so gnarly, I'm telling you. Oh, my God. Okay, I think we're good. I don't think it wants to hurt me. I got to stop being soft. Okay. The cash is, let's see. But, oh, Jesus. Oh, God damn, I'm telling you, bro. Okay, let me cover the legs here. Actually, jeez. God, I don't think you got, yeah, okay. I wish I could point the camera at this thing. It's fucking huge. It's been here for hours. I think it would have stung me by now. Okay. On the other hand, there's been a rush to cash. Both long positions and short positions have been closed out, a sure sign of chaos and uncertainty. Cash in money market funds has increased substantially. This doesn't tell us anything about fundamentals, but the outlook for eventual market performance has improved. The more people have sold, the less they have to sell, and the more cash they have with which to buy so that means the more cash they have with which to buy when they turn less pessimistic. This is a good time to point out that thus far in this episode, there's additional evidence that there's no such thing in the investment world as a sure thing, magic potion, or silver bullet. I find it interesting that the price of gold, historically considered a greater source of protection against tough times, has declined several percent over the last month. Here's a headline of a story from a gold site. Gold price is sharply down as dread pervasive in the marketplace. It wasn't supposed to work that day. Gold is safe. Is it the oldest form of money? I don't know. It's an old form. The value of it, everyone knows. Everyone can appreciate that gold is valuable. And because everyone can appreciate that, it's valuable. Now it's worth way more than the utility it provides. So gold actually provides some utility in some electronics. There's good things. It has good properties to it, but it's far more valuable than the actual utility it provides. That means that a lot of the price of gold is simply because people expect it to be valuable, so they value it as such. So Bitcoin, which partisans had said would serve as a safe harbor in times of crisis, again, this is Howard Marks saying this, may be down more than any other asset class. I apply that term to Bitcoin advisedly. It's lost 47.6% over the last month from 10,000 to 5,000, though it's rebounded since then. This is a little old. Risk parity funds, which were designed to do well in most environments, experienced double-digit loss in February. Even the world's greatest algorithmic fund, which supports a fabulous long-term record, is reported to have suffered a loss of several percent last month. Of course, this is a short, chaotic period, but we can say that so far the evidence of a miracle investment is lacking. There's nothing new here. Okay, so he ends with, what do we know? This is Howard Marks. What do we know? Not much, other than the fact that asset prices are well down. Asset holders' ability to hold coolly is evaporating, and motivated selling is picking up. I'll sum up my views simply, since there's nothing sophisticated to say. The bottom is the day before recovery begins. Okay, so I want to talk about this for some, and this is something I was so close to making a prediction on the S&P 500, but I just wasn't sure enough. So I was like, I like to make predictions only on things that I reasonably think are going to happen. I'm surprised that the market is only right now, at 2,500. Yeah, it's chaotic. Shit, I'm reading about this stuff. Large economies are going to be shut down for a long fucking time. I would think the market would be down 50%. I would think that we'll see lows as much as 1,400 to 1,600 in the S&P 500. That's like over 50% loss. I'm frankly surprised that it hasn't yet. And what does that tell me? That tells me that the market probably knows something I don't. Because it's already priced in, and the people that are trading these securities, they spend a hell of a lot more time researching this shit than I do. So maybe they think that there's going to be a quicker recovery. They think that the governments are going to react properly. I'm just looking around. I'm saying large economies. We are just getting started. That's the way I look at this. We're just getting fucking started. I think it's going to come back sharply, but I still think it's going to drop more. Now, I don't know how much it's going to drop, and I'm not telling you when to time the market, and I'm not Jesus, but that's just me shooting from the hip here. I'm just like, why are we not? The whole world's fucking shutting down, and we don't even, And I'm wondering, where the S&P 500 is trading where it was in like 2019, in January 2019. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, something's going on here. It's blowing my mind. Okay. So the bottom is the day before the recovery begins. Thus, it's absolutely impossible to know when the bottom has been reached, ever. So people say, buy, wait for the bottom to hit. It's impossible to know this. Oaktree explicitly rejects the notion of waiting for the bottom. We buy when we can access value cheap. So if a t-shirt's 50% off, you're going to buy the fucking t-shirt. If a company's 50% off, you're going to buy the company. Now, you're not going to worry about, well, it could go lower tomorrow. No, you're going to buy it if you see value. That's the reality of it. So many people are waiting, like, wait for the bottom, wait for the bottom, wait for the bottom. Dude, good luck trying to find that bottom. It's a fool's errand. Even though there's no way to say the bottom is at hand, the condition that make bargains available certainly are materializing. Given the price drops and selling we've seen so far, I believe this is a good time to invest, although of course it may prove not have been the best time. No one can argue that you should spend all your money today, but equally no one can argue that you shouldn't spend any. The more you want to garner potential gains and don't mind market-to-market losses, the more you should invest here. On the other hand, the more you care about protecting against interim markdowns and are able to live with missing opportunities for profit, the less you should invest. Again, he's talking to people that are kind of actively doing shit with their money. For the vast majority of people, which I still think is interesting and helpful, for the vast majority of people, you're not fucking looking at the markets every day and making decisions based on that. You're going to keep contributing once a month to your retirement account, and you're just never going to touch it. You're just going to let it do. Take a piece of each paycheck, put it away. It's that simple. But is there really an argument for not investing at all? In my opinion, the fact that we're not necessarily at the bottom isn't such an argument. Right. Howard Marks, legend. Appreciate that, Brother Beast. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to talk then we're going to talk about the digital dollar. So we're going to talk about some COVID testing in the United States, and then we're going to go digital dollar. We're going to talk a little bit about money. What does it mean to be a dollar bill? Then we're going to talk about the Economist has a good piece, and I'm going to end with some epic shit. We're going to end with some questions. So whatever Charlie's got for me, we're going to end with some epic shit from my favorite book I've ever read, Gates of Fire. Okay, so there's this thing called the COVID Tracking Project. Now, it's a project that compiles all the states and U.S. territories, all their testing results. Now, I'll link to this in the show notes. It's linked to right now if you become a $5 a month Patreon supporter. That plug. Again, support me and Charlie. Charlie's a starving college student. We need to actually, first of all, he's not starving. You know what? I'm going on a rant for a second. This whole notion of a starving college student, your mammy and pappy is buying everything for you. I don't understand. Oh, I don't have any. You got your fucking dining hall swipes, people. What are we fucking talking about? Like, when have you ever eaten more in your life? I'm more starving now than I was when I was in fucking college. And, everyone's got a different college experience. I'm saying most people, starving college student. It's like, okay, your parents are backing your ass up. A lot of people work through college. I worked a little bit in college. Now, I'm not going to dog those people. What I'm going to say is I think people, holy shit, the wasp is here. Maybe I'm saying something bad. Jesus Christ. Yeah, a lot of people would say starving college student. Oh my God, yeah, your parents are paying $50,000 a year in tuition for you, and you got meal swipes. So let's relax on the starving college student. So Charlie's not starving, but does get 50%, 50/50 member on this shit. So yeah, support on Patreon. We greatly appreciate that. Okay, the COVID tracking project, it was built. It just compiles all the data from official sources. So this is some estimation. All the official, it's focused on the United States. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through this. Very interesting. So I'm going to walk you through between March 22nd and March 27th. I'm going to start with the 20, how many total tests results. So these are all the positive results, all the negative results. So starting with March 22nd, I'm going to go over the next, it's going to be 7 days. 225,000, 279,000, 344,000, 421,000, 519,000, 626,000. So as of March, the jump from March 26th to March 27th was over 100,000. The testing is coming online in the United States. This is what we need. This is the number one thing that's going to allow us to actually get through this. The more tests we can do, the more we can identify where. Holy fucking shit. God damn. This wasp. Okay, we're good. The more we can identify who has this shit, the more we can identify which businesses we can open up, which areas of the country we can open up, things like that. Just keeping everyone just shut in is a short-term solution. We need testing. 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 And there's good news is, I knew my sis would call me out on the met. Yeah, she says not everyone has mammy and pappy. A lot of college students don't. I get that. My point is, I think a lot of people, the whole starving college student thing, it's like, come on. I think a lot of people overuse that for people that aren't actually starving. Anyway, thank you, Snake. I was fortunate to have a mammy and pappy that paid for everything. I'll never forget that. Thank you so much. Love you both. So the testing is coming online. So that's a good fucking thing. And the COVID tracking project, I'll link to it. Yeah, the U.S. is finally fucking. We're finally getting the tests we need, and it needs to be more than 100,000 a day, but it's getting there. It's ramping up fast, so we'll see what it does. Okay, so there's been talk of, let's see, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the digital dollar, and the reason this came up, I love talking about blockchain stuff. The reason this, I talk about things I'm super interested in. I'm super interested in this space. So the reason this came up was because in some of the bills, in some of the early drafts of the bills, they were calling for work to be done on a digital dollar. Now, why at this time are we worrying about a fucking digital dollar? Shouldn't we be worried about tests and other shit? Well, the reason a digital dollar may be a good idea, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but I just want to tell you why it was being discussed in these early versions of the bills. Like Pelosi was floating it around, and some other. It didn't end up in the bill, the CARES Act, but the idea is that if we have a digital dollar, we can more effectively distribute that to Americans. Now, I'm going to read. You say, well, what do you mean? If you have a checking account, they'll distribute the check within within a reasonable amount of time. Deposit the $1,200 for this as part of the state. A reasonable amount of time, just like you get your tax refund within a couple weeks after you file. Now, you may find this interesting. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation estimated in 2017 that 6.5% of American households are unbanked, meaning that no one has a checking or savings account. People with bank accounts can use check cashing services. So for these people that are unbanked, 6.5% of U.S. households, they'll be sent a check, and they don't have a bank account. So what do you do with the check? You go to a check cashing service, which are fucking charge fees and fleece you on that stuff. So another option would be to use the Treasury Department's Direct Express MasterCard, a prepaid card that the government already uses to distribute benefits. But these cards are not a great solution either because they're not reloadable. So for some benefits, the federal government will send you basically a gift card that you can use anywhere. So that's why there's been talks of of the digital of a digital dollar. Now, I think something that people and okay, so I should address this. Uh, I want to address a quote. So, well, isn't the dollar already digital? I go on bankofamerica.com and I have a US dollar, right? It's there in my checking account. Well, here's the deal. Here's what they say to that. In some ways, the dollar is already digital. The digits in your bank account stand for dollars, and you can pay with dollars by swiping your credit card. But those digits in your bank account are debts that your bank owes you. A true digital dollar would be a debt the US government owes you. That's also what physical cash represents. In most countries, a government IOU is less risky than an IOU from a commercial bank, particularly during a panic. Hence the popular reference to stockpiling cash under a mattress. If I have $100 in cash, that is safer in my hand. That is safer than having $100 in a checking account. Why? The bank could go under. Now the banks are FDIC insured. I think up to $1 million. If your bank goes down, your money in there, you'll get it eventually. But I don't want to wait for eventually. What if? And I don't keep cash on hand. That's not how I roll. But I'm just saying, it's an interesting thing to think about. The money in your checking account is not. It's not a U.S. dollar. It's a debt your bank owes to you that when you go to the ATM you can withdraw it, or that when you make a transfer or when you pay a credit card off, that they will indeed send that. That is not an actual U.S. dollar. So a digital U.S. dollar would be basically, and they called it. There was a paper done on this, and they called it. What did they call it? They called it the. Damn, I forgot what they called it, but basically, it was basically they're thinking about providing Fuking the retail bank services that bank, your Bank of America checking account, you go to ATM, Wells Fargo, whatever it is, like having the federal government do that directly, right? So that you would just have a checking account with the federal government. Like the federal government's not going to go bankrupt. Like your dollar's there. Why not? Why not cut out the middleman? Now there's obviously risks to this. Our whole banking system is predicated on Fuking retail banking, and they handle this stuff, and the Fed doesn't get close to that. And do you want the government building you a mobile app? It's like to access your money. That sounds like a walking nightmare. But it's an interesting. I think people take cash for granted, and this is some of the MIT Technology Review. Something that thank you, Jack Lucas. Be free. That's chill. So people think, oh well, isn't Venmo so much better? Isn't like they think just because we have technology that means the payment situation is better in every single way. Now I will admit Venmo makes things super easy. I can send people, U.S. citizens, I can send them money, even though it takes fucking 3 to 5 business days or whatever. Is dog shit. And I think cryptocurrency can address a lot of that stuff. But we'll talk about that. I mean, I talk about that shit all the time. But what we forget, the beauty of cash, the beauty of cash is that if I have $100 in my hand, I have a $100 bill, I have a Benjamin, it is presumed that I own that $100. There's no weird hand wavy shit. I have $100 in my hand and I give it to you, assuming it's not counterfeit. Now that's definitely a trade-off there. But assuming it's not counterfeit, I give that $100 to someone, boom, it is right there. It is pure. It is in their hand right there. And there's no evidence of that transaction. The issue with a lot of transactions now going online, credit cards, debit cards, all this shit, you can never now be tracked like never before. And I'm not necessarily a tinfoil hat guy, but there is something pure about a cash transaction. Someone gives you a good or a service, you give them cash, poof. There's no history of it. It was boom. It was pure. It was done. It's over. And it immediately settled. You did not have to transfer it to Venmo, then transfer it to your bank account. It immediately settled that instant. And there's no middleman between you and your money. When you have cash on hand, that is your money. It's not in a bank account. It's not in a fucking stock or whatever it could be in. You have that money in your hand. So there's something special about that. So, there's also no history of that transaction. So when you have a $100 bill, it's like that cash is right there. So people aren't going to not accept it because they're going to look up the ID number and all this shit. There's something pure about that, which you can do with some cryptocurrencies because they're only pseudo anonymous. So cash kind of gets a bad rap, and I never use it, but there are some features it has that our electronic system currently does not have. So I'm going to quote them. They say, "We call banknotes and coins cash, but the term really refers to something more abstract. Cash is essentially money that your government owes you. In the old days, this was a literal debt. I promised to pay the bearer on demand the sum of..." So I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of, it still appears on British banknotes, a notional guarantee that the Bank of England will hand over the same value in gold in exchange for your note. Today, it represents the more abstract guarantee, and we talked a little about this, that you will always be able to use that note to pay for things. So right, we're not on the gold standard anymore. So what does the U.S. dollar represent? What does cash today even mean? It just means that the government is promising that people will use this as a form of cash, or people will use this as a form of payment, and you can trust that holding on to it and transacting in it will be safe, not only today but for decades and years, centuries to come. So it's an interesting Fukin thing. So. And that, this is kind of the fugazi of the whole situation. So, another thing I wanted to bring up. So the interesting thing about U.S. dollars. So take one example, like let's just say, for example, Bitcoin. Everyone was just transacting in Bitcoin now, and boom, Bitcoin, blah blah blah. Like it was instant. Everyone trusted it. Blah blah blah. Let's just say, as an example, the reason that U.S. dollars, there's a need for them. But besides the fact that it's stable, so Bitcoin's not stable, but let's just assume Bitcoin's still. Let's just assume it's just stable. The reason there will always be a demand for U.S. dollars because you have to pay taxes in U.S. dollars. So you will always, even if the whole world was transacting in Bitcoin, if all Americans are transacting in Bitcoin, when it comes for tax time, you'd have to pay in U.S. dollars. So that it's like a cheat code that the government uses to ensure that that the government, the money that they issue, the fiat currency, fiat just means any currency issued by a government, it will always be it'll always be in style, because they're always going to force you to pay taxes in that form of cash. So even if everyone was transacting in Fukin Bitcoin, you would still need U.S. dollars because you'd have to pay the government with U.S. dollars. So it's just kind of an interesting little thing there. Okay, so we've got, and Snake, thanks for sharing this article with me. We got The Economist had a piece called "Paying to Stop the Pandemic." So I'm going to read through some of these things. First of all, I think The Economist is a really good publication. So that's why I quote them a lot here. So I'm gonna go into it. Okay. So in the real world, there are trade-offs between the two strategies. Though governments can make both more efficient. South Korea, China, and Italy have shown that this starts with mass testing, which we talked about before. The more clearly you can identify who has the disease, the less you depend upon the indiscriminate restrictions. Tests for antibodies to the virus, picking up who has been infected and recovered, are needed to supplement today's, which are only valid just before and during the illness. Ooh, interesting. So I did not know that. You would think I would have read all this stuff going in. I didn't catch that sentence here. So tests only work. Need to supplement today's, which are only valid before and during the illness. That will let immune people go about their business in the knowledge that they cannot be a source of further infections. Though I think the jury is still not out on the fact that you can get this again. I think it's likely you can't, at least until it takes a few years to mutate, but it is something to consider. Okay, so by keeping infection rates relatively low, it leaves many people susceptible to the virus. And since COVID-19 is now so widespread within countries and around the world, the imperial model suggests that epidemics would return within a few weeks of the restrictions being lifted. To avoid this, countries must suppress the disease each time it resurfaces, spending at least half their time in lockdown. So some of the stuff that I'm reading, and I look at the markets, I'm like, damn, why are the markets not getting, why are they not getting a hell of a lot more depressed? Why are we not down by 50%? If the market knows something I don't, maybe, or I don't know. It's very, very surprised me. So no wonder governments are opting, again, this is the Economist article, which I'll link to. No wonder governments are opting for the more stringent controls needed to suppress the pandemic. Suppression has the advantage that has worked in China. On March 18th, Italy added 4,207 new cases, whereas Wuhan counted none at all. China has recorded a total of just over 80,000 cases in a population of 1.4 billion people. For comparison, the Imperial Group is this British group I believe in London that was helping conduct this analysis, estimated that the virus, I think it's out of a university, but for comparison, the Imperial Group estimated that the virus left to itself would infect more than 80% of the population in Britain and America. How can we? So whenever people talk about numbers in China, that China has this under control, I always think, guys, how can you? First of all, you can't trust what China's saying. You really can't. Now, this was a country that said the U.S. Army brought the disease to China. They were spreading that rumor among their own people. This was the country that, when this shit was first starting to hit the fan, they were not only suppressing information about COVID-19 from getting out of their own country, they were suppressing their own people from sharing it within the country because they don't want to stoke fear. So when they say they're only at 8,000, maybe it's true, but people aren't even in this article. People aren't even. Oh, Jack, I just see. Do you think the China numbers are true? Personally, if I had to say, no, I don't think they're true. You cannot trust them. Some of the stuff I've seen some stuff, and I'm sure you can find these reports. I mean, I have seen that there are. It's looking like this is still a big issue in China, and they're just trying to keep their shit together, and they're lying about the numbers. They're lying to the world. They're lying to their own people. So, listen, all I'm saying is I think whenever you talk about the Chinese numbers, you needed to have an asterisk associated with them. So that reminds me, people kind of dog on the United States' response, the federal government to the system. I think people forget. Now, I'm not excusing the federal government, what they did and how slow it took them to ramp up. They should have been the pros here, the adults in the room, and should have raised the alarm bells much sooner than they did. But I think people forget the fact that we have a federal system in the United States, right? That's states, and we have a central government, right? Which a lot of the, like, take voting, for example, a lot of the things the states are in control of. So a lot of these things the states are in control of, like voting, for example. So part of our system in the United States is that in order for us to lie about our numbers, the US to lie about our numbers, now this COVID tracking project, which I brought up earlier, in order for that to be possible, same thing with elections, in order for an election to be in order for an election to be a scam, the fact of the matter is that states would have to collude. States have their own COVID testing data that they are sharing and reporting. They also have their own way of collecting votes and reporting. Not even just the states; the different counties and different cities have their own way. Have their own way of doing votes. Now, the distributed system isn't always the best, but it does have. There are pros and cons to it. Again, there are no solutions, only I forget the quote. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. Exactly. So that is, yes, the United States has been slower to respond, but now the fact that it's distributed, that is better in some regard. And one of those examples that I think we can really trust the numbers coming out of the United States, because all the states are reporting individual numbers. And then we can add those up. Now, it's possible the states are plus or minus, but for there to be a large scale lying effort and like to try to cover this shit up, no fucking way, bro. You can't pull that shit in the United States. It doesn't work. We're not built that. I love when Trump said the United States of America was not designed to be shut down. That got me fired up, actually. But no, obviously he's a jackass. Anyway, yeah. So I don't trust the China numbers. But and I'm surprised people aren't even talking about it when they talk about the China numbers. Like, can you really trust this shit? Okay. So a second line of attack is to use technology to administer quarantines and social distancing. China's using apps to certify who is clear of the disease and who is not. Both it and South Korea are using big data and social media to trace infections, alert people to hotspots, and round up contacts. South Korea changed the law to allow the state to gain access to medical records. This is crazy. South Korea changed the law to allow the state to gain access to medical records and share them without a warrant. In normal times, many democracies might find that too intrusive. Times are not normal. So, here's the thing. We're about to wrap up here. I'm going to share some epic quotes, and then Charlie, anyone got any last minute questions? We'll cue those up before I end with this. My last topic. I'm going to share a little piece of a book that I think is fucking epic, that I think everyone get everyone fucking fired up. So get your questions in now if you have any. Charlie, share them to me, and I'll take a look at them. And then I'll close out. I'll close out with the fucking the book. Okay, so yeah. So the thing is, where was I here? So yeah, in normal times, many democracies find that too intrusive. Times are not normal. Okay. So here's the thing. So this is, I think, a little bit of what Thomas Massie was getting at, that Republican dude that was holding up the vote. And I think it's important to look at what people were saying. Similar times when 9/11 happened, we were, passed the Patriot Act right around there. There's certain legislation that gets passed in crises that you really got to be careful of. Like, Patriot Act is one of those. There were things passed post 9/11 that were passed in a rush that ended up fucking backfiring 10 years later. So Snowden gave us, and I talk about this all the time, the NSA, National Security Agency. Now I dog on China a lot. The United States is by no means perfect. No country's perfect. Oh shit, we got some wind. Hopefully this umbrella does. Oh damn, my papers are flying away. We're gonna go get them out. We're almost done here. No country's perfect, and the United States really fucked up on this one. The NSA lied to Congress on 2 occasions. General Clapper came in and said, we do not do bulk data collection on Americans. I think this was in like early, like 2010-ish or something. Then the Snowden leaks happened. It turns out it was a complete lie. So the NSA was doing bulk data collections on millions of Americans. Whether you had a warrant or not, your data was getting picked up and looked at. Now that is in my belief, an infringement on civil liberties. That cannot be allowed to happen. Those powers were made possible by these things passed post 9/11. So it is worth. Well, I'm not saying Thomas Massie was right. I am saying it is worth thinking about these power grabs. What is the legislation that is being passed that's going to give the government even more power, maybe too much power? So I just think it's right to be it's right to be thinking that way. So it's really easy to rally around something. Oh, the Patriot Act, like let's do it. It's really easy to rally in the moment, but the Congress people that raised concerns at the time, and no one remembers, and I don't think the bulk of people care about the fact that the U.S. was doing bulk data collection. But the fact of the matter is, the industry responded, and now end-to-end encryption is the default. Unless something's end-to-end encrypted, you can assume the U.S. government can read all of it. That's a fact. You can assume that most governments can read all of it. That is a fact. So anything in Google, Facebook, if you're anything in Apple backed up to iCloud, don't buy the security bullshit from Apple. They do a lot of good, but it's by no means completely secure. The U.S. government has access to all that shit, including your messages. They are end-to-end encrypted, but if you back up to iCloud, all that shit's backed up. Your photos, Google Photos, the government can see all that. It's not private unless it's end-to-end encrypted. That's where we're at there. So I think it's worth it in times of crises. It's really easy to pass overbearing legislation. It's worth it to really think through some of these things, because it can come back to bite you in the ass. But unfortunately, there's not much time for debate on these things. So that's the trouble. That's the tough part. Okay, we got one more question here by Nadav. I appreciate that, Brother Beast. And then we're going to end with just a little thing to fire everyone up, and then we're going to call this show done. I appreciate everyone joining. Do you think that those invasive moves into privacy will last after the whole COVID-19 lapse is done, gathering and using that info against your citizens? So I really like that point. This is exactly. So I didn't even read it before I went into my little rant there. I did not even see this. So then, Nadav, that's a great point. The question is, will now that South Korea has access to all their citizens' medical records, are they going to are they going to give that up in the future? Are they going to say this data because we need to prevent against future pandemics? If I had to say, I'd say yes. In the South Korea case, that's such an extreme case that the government doesn't need access. It can share your data, your medical history without your consent. I do think that will probably be that will go back to normal, but it is a hell of a thing to think about that in times of crises, the U.S. government gets a lot, or not in the U.S., well, the U.S. government too, but all governments get a hell of a lot more power. Something interesting was, I was going to say, people forget, a lot of people weren't even fucking alive. In World War II, there was price fixing by the U.S. government. Now, it was a wartime era. Now, it was the right thing to do, but there was price fixing. So the U.S. government could ensure they could get the supplies they need at the cost. They couldn't get price gouged. And also, one of the things, there was also salary caps. So a reason that healthcare is tied to employment in the United States is because one of the reasons is because during World War II, your salary were capped. So how did employers get and attract talent? Well, they had to offer perks, and it wasn't fucking ping pong tables. Your grandparents were cooler than that. It was fucking healthcare. They would say, okay, fine, we can only give you $50,000 or whatever the different salary caps were, but we can also give you health insurance. So we'll pay for that. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, 60 years later, 80 years later, whatever it is, we are fucking still. That's a big reason today why employers are kind of in charge of your healthcare. It's another perk. Okay, Really appreciate everyone who can chime in with the questions. Love it. Okay. So I'm going to end here. There's a book called Gates of Fire. I read it on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's my favorite book I've ever read. It gets me fucking fired up. And I want to share this with you because I think right now, I don't know, right now is obviously a difficult time. But I think it's important. It's important to double down and do what you would normally do on a day-to-day basis. So what does that mean? That means staying calm. Getting your fucking chores done. That means taking care of your parents. That means taking care of your grandparents. That means taking care of your friends. That means going through the motions instead of losing your cool and letting fear take over. Okay, the single best thing you can do is not learn about all the market shit and not learn about fucking what the virus actually does. The single best thing you can do is make sure your people are taken care of, make sure yourself are taken care of, make sure you don't lose your head. Make sure to use this time. For once in your life, you don't have to go to these dog shit social gatherings that you never like to go to anyway. You don't have to go to drinks with friends you don't like. You don't have to hang out with people you don't want to hang out with. You have an excuse. You have an excuse that is a gift. You have a shit ton of time now. Now, a lot of people, this is certainly screwing them. Now, I don't want to ignore that, but for a lot of you, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. You have a bunch of extra free time. Now, granted, you're locked in your house, but we have the beauty of the internet. You can do so much with the power of the internet. You can work on projects. You can think of new business ideas. You can write that book you've always wanted to write. You can start a podcast you want to start. You have the time you want to do the things that you've always wanted to do, so fucking do them. Use this as an opportunity, okay? Don't fucking lose your head and just go on Facebook all day and just read about this shit all day. It'll make you crazy. I'm trying to be very cognizant of how much time I spend on preparing for the shooting from the hip because I got other shit I got to get done. I got my people I got to check in on. I got to make sure that the squad is okay. So I encourage you to do the same. That is the single best thing you can do. So I encourage you to think about that. I encourage you to do it. I encourage you to remain calm and do what you need to do to help your people and yourself. Okay, so I'm going to end with this. So Gates of Fire, it's about the Battle of Thermopylae, which was in August or September around there, 480 BC. It's when all the city-states, the Greek city-states, led by King Leonidas. This is during the second Persian invasion of Greece. The war only lasted about a year, ended in 479 BC. Second Persian invasion of Greece by King Xerxes. Came to Greece, bunch of city-states fought under King Leonidas. So Athens was ultimately burned to the ground during this shit, but ultimately the Persian army was expelled from Europe. So I'm going to read a little passage from this because I think it's fucking epic. It's one of my favorite books. I highly recommend it, and we're going to get fired up. We're going to come out of this podcast fired up, and we're going to be ready to live. Okay, so it says this. This is mid battle. So this is fucking Spartans fighting side by side. You've all seen 300. Damn, my papers are flying away. Oh no, that's not good. Those papers are flying away. Okay, here's the deal. We're going to go get them after this. We're almost done. Okay, it says this. Reform. I heard an officer shouting. Someone shoved me aside from behind. In an instant, other Spartans from another platoon surged forward, reinforcing the membrane-thin front, which stood at the brink of buckling. So granted, we're not at war right now. We're not on a battlefield. But what we are doing, we are on a battlefield sometimes of our own creations. People are stressed out around us. Companies are stressed out. Our leaders are stressed out. Our family members, our friends are stressed out. Be strong for them. So we're not fucking going to war. We got a hell of a lot easier than having to go to war. This isn't WW2, okay? But it doesn't mean we can't show how strong we are, okay? So it goes on to say, this was fighting scrambled. It stopped the heart to behold the gallantry of it. In moments, what had been a situation at the brink of catastrophe was transformed by the discipline and order of the reinforcing ranks into a strong point, a fulcrum of vantage. Each found himself in the fore. No matter what rank he had held in formation, now assumed the role of officer. These close ranks and lap shields, shadow to shadow, a wall of bronze rose before the scrambled mass. So a bunch of bodies just fucking fighting on the battlefield. That's what we're talking about right now. Buying precious instants for those who found themselves in the rear to reform and remarshal, surging into position in second, third, fourth ranks and take on that station's role and rally to it. Nothing fires the warrior's heart more with courage than to find himself and his comrades at the point of annihilation, at the brink of being routed routed and overrun, and then to dredge not merely from one's own bowels or guts, but from one's own discipline and training, the presence of mind not to panic, not to yield to the possession of despair, but instead to complete those homely acts of order with Dianekes. So I think a lot of people up the front on the front lines right now in the healthcare system, fucking keeping your cool. And what is it? What do you need? What do these healthcare people need to do? Fucking, they need to do what they were trained to do. They need to do these, as this thing says, the homely acts of order. The thing they need to follow protocol. They need to stay calm. They need to, obviously they're under a shit ton of strain. They're in, especially in Italy, they're under new circumstances. But what they need to do is they need to fall back on their training. Okay, same thing. You need to fall back on. It's never going to help to not be keep things orderly, keep things calm, keep things cool, keep things calculated. So it goes on to perform. So the supreme accomplishment of a warrior is to perform the commonplace under far from commonplace conditions. Perform the commonplace under far from commonplace conditions. That's not just the accomplishment of warrior. That's just the accomplishment of greatness. Do what you know you need to do in moments of hardship. That's what it comes down to. So it goes on. Not only to achieve this for oneself alone, as Achilles or the solo champions of yore, but to do it as part of a unit, to feel about oneself, one's brothers in arms, in an instance like this of chaos and disorder, comrades whom one doesn't even know, with whom one has never trained, to feel them filling the spaces alongside him, from spear side and shield side, fore and rear, to behold one's comrades likewise rallying, not in a frenzy of mad possession, driven abandon, but with order and self-composure, each man knowing his role and rising to it, drawing strength from him as he draws it from them. The warrior in these moments finds himself lifted as if by the hand of a god. He cannot tell where his being leaves off and that of the comrade beside him begins. In that moment, the phalanx forms a unity so dense and all divining that it performs not merely at the level of a machine or engine of war, but surpassing that to the state of a single organism, a beast of one blood and heart. Give me shivers just saying that. Gets me fired up. Okay, we'll end it there, people. Stay strong. Keep your composure. We're again, it's looking like some governors are saying that they see the healthcare system going to peak within 2 weeks is when the most infections are going to peak. So I do think we're still in the middle of this. We're not out of the woods. We do need to prepare for the eventuality that things will get worse, and we need to be strong for when they do. We need to, in any way we can help these healthcare workers, any way we can help anyone that's doing anything to help in this situation. We need to stay calm. Don't spread your fear. It's very easy if you're feeling down or feeling negative about something to bring someone else into that fold. Try not to do that. Okay. You may have lost your job. Your finances may be hurt, and you may be struggling. There are a lot of things. It's very easy to spread that. Try to, for your fellow people, your fellow friends, your Fukin unit, try to stay as cool, calm, and collected as possible. Now, I'm not saying don't share your fears, don't share what you're afraid of, don't share your pains, but do it in a constructive way and try to keep your Fukin cool. Don't spread that fear. Thank you so much for joining. This was Shooting from the Hip number 6 with Dick Lucas, Charlie Finley, producer, who was in the chat room, which we appreciate that he was there for that. Keep your squadron tight, Nadab. I love it. Really appreciate everyone in the live chat. Again, we do this every Saturday. We do this every Saturday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Let me know feedback. Share this out. Again, the single best thing you can do, become a Patreon member. If you contribute at least $5 a month, you can get access to all the full show notes, not just the limited ones on YouTube and on the podcast show notes. I'll also publish this podcast wherever podcasts are, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Fukin, Apple Podcasts, Fukin Pocket Cast, wherever you get your podcasts, we publish this. I'll try to get that published today, Saturday. Let me know what you think of the show. Really, really appreciate everyone coming out. This is fun. Let's keep it going. One love. Stay strong. Let's go over here, and we're good, and we're live, and we're ending it, and we appreciate. And all around me, a million faces, wanna places. Wanna face all around me, familiar faces. Wanna play. Wanna play. And I find it kind of funny. I find it kind of sad that the dreams in which I'm dead are the best I've ever had. Stay strong, people. Stay strong. Thanks for joining. One love. Till next week. See you guys. Peace out. Lars D, you're my boy. Shooting from the hip number 6. Dick Lucas, Charlie Finch, Finley. Patreon. $5. Get all access to the show notes. We're in this together, people. Stay strong. One love. End stream.